যদি সবাই ফিরে যায়, ওরে ওরে ও ভাগা সবাই ফিরে যায়, যদি গহন পথে যাওয়ার কালে কেউ ফিরে না যায়, তবে পথের কাটা তুই রক্ত মাখা চরণ তলে একলা দলরে, তুই রক্ত মাখা চরণ তলে একলা দলরে, যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে। যদি আলো না ধরে, ওরে ওরে ও ভাগা আলো না ধরে, যদি ঝড় বাদলে আধার রাতে দুয়ার দেয় ঘরে, তবে বজ্রানলে আপন বুকের পাঁজর জ্বালিয়ে নিয়ে একলা চলো রে, আপন বুকের পাঁজর জ্বালিয়ে নিয়ে একলা চলো রে, যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে। একলা চলো, একলা চলো, একলা চলো, একলা চলো রে।
Hi guys, thank you for joining the live stream. I hope the audio is coming fine. I'm trying out a different audio setup. By different, I mean just that the mic is no longer where it was. I've just kept it in a different spot. Let's see if it captures my voice as accurately as before. Now, today we have a very, very interesting book to get to. A lot of fascinating people are involved with the book, but that's not the point. The point of the book is how well it has been researched. And there will be a conversation. Abhay saying, I thought this was a conversation. No, it's not a podcast. We will have him on just to specifically discuss this book as well. But first, we are going to go through the introduction, acknowledgement, a bit of the first chapter, and later in the membership live streams, we will someday finish the entire book as well. This was sent to me by Dr. Gangopadhyay himself. Very, I think it was very flattering. It is very flattering to get books as gifts from the authors themselves, like Dr. Shomoday, now Dr. Kausik Gangopadhyay. Next audience interaction, tomorrow or day after, this week only. So I hope the audio is coming fine. I've kept the mic here, and it's so that it's not in front of my face. I wonder if the volume is correct. Seems to be correct. So it's called The Joy Bangla Deception, Bangladeshi Islamism under the facade of Bengali nationalism. And this is, I think, an absolutely one of the most relevant and important topics that we can discuss as people who love our country in the current times. The language battles, the language warfare, the regionalism BS is one of the key enemies of India at the moment, I feel. Let's see how many have joined. Rohan Dante, hi Abhay, Gautam, yes, Nandish. Did India finally wake up to its warrior genes? Seems like it. Asjend, good evening. Ganesh shooting complete. No. Ganesh shooting. Fund के बिना गाने का shooting कहाँ से होगा? अभी तो fundraising शुरू ही नहीं किया है. The publication is from Garuda only. That's one of the things I wanted to mention about the book. That again, unfortunately, this is the second book of Dr. Kausik Gangopadhyay, and it's again coming from a publication which is usually taken seriously by only right wingers of only India. That's not really an evil thing, because I guess after all, if people don't publish books like this in the mainstream, which is dominated by the leftists and the liberals, who will then publish these books? How will we come to know of these stuff written by these specific authors? Will they just send us PDFs? Even then, will we really read it? So of course, Garuda Prakashan has an importance. So if Garuda Prakashan doesn't print these books, who will? And so without Garuda, we won't even get to the all these thoughts that are inside all these great authors. The problem is that when a publication is marked out to be just a right-wing publication, then nobody other than right-wingers read it. Especially because at this point, Garuda will publish anyone, I guess, who claims to be right-winger, who claims to have some views in common with any right-winger in India. They will publish their books. But why I find this very unfortunate is because Kausik Gangopadhyay, first of all, is a legitimate scholar, credentialed academic, and people love the credentials. And people who pretend to not like credentials are also the ones who want to send their kids to specific and elite colleges and universities only, not any random colleges or universities. So Kausik Gangopadhyay did his PhD from University of Rochester in economics. Then now teaches economics at IIM Kozhikode. And his first book, The Majoritarian Myth, also came out from Garuda Prakashan, which did absolutely phenomenal, absolutely original research. And he has done that again. Although this book, I guess, is building up upon what someone called Devabrata, a Bengali guy, wrote in the beginning. That was about in 2018, and now he has built on top of it and written the entire book, Kausik Gangopadhyay. We will get to their bios as well. And he has written the entire Bengali translation of this book by himself as well, Dr. Kausik Gangopadhyay. So yes, as Nandish is saying here, alternative publications are important, but my only qualm is that research, which is at the levels that Dr. Kausik Gangopadhyay is doing, those books do not deserve to come out of Garuda. Obviously, he's making Garuda better, and the entire reader base of Garuda, they are getting more spiritual and brain fulfillment from reading these books. But neutrals, liberals, leftists, they also must be attracted to read these books, which cannot happen if they come out of Garuda. So that's just my sadness with this, that Dr. Kausik Gangopadhyay is not yet, even now, being published by the mainstream giants, Bloomsbury, Penguin and stuff. But someday, I guess. Is red really the color of Bengali culture, or it became so because of commies? Commies only. ब्राह्मण भोजन नहीं करोगे तो ऐसा ही होगा. नॉन डिस्क्रिप्ट पब्लिशर्स, नॉन डिस्क्रिप्ट मत बोलो हमारे चैनल में, नॉन डिस्क्रिप्ट नहीं है. मगर yeah, wouldn't Penguin publish such books? No, Penguin, I guess, probably won't publish unless the author is really, really, really famous. That's the extra layer of conditions that apply only to right-wingers. If it was a leftist, then it could have been. Can I buy this through your link? I forgot to post my affiliate links in the description box. So my main point of doing this live stream today is, please, as soon as possible, go buy this book. I will put the affiliate links later on. You all can buy through that or not. But as soon as possible, give the signal to Amazon, who are keeping a cut money, and to Garuda even, and to other publishers, other big publishers, that no matter what the Twitter follower count of Kausik Gangopadhyay, his books do sell like hell. So that signal needs to go out to all publishers. So buy this book as soon as possible. And of course, why you must buy this book as soon as possible? For that, we are hosting this live stream today, so that you get a vibe of the knowledge level of the book, and what I find is a very, very interesting, important, and beautiful angle that Kausik Gangopadhyay has taken in his research while writing this book, as he did in the Majoritarian Myth book as well. I was saying some people are not recognized in their time. Yeah, they get recognition much after. Yes. Omega is saying, serious question, brother. Why is not Bengal BJP complaining for arrest of international commies in West Bengal? If you're aware, they already made many seditious remarks. Whole country is unaware. Yeah, seditious remarks when made by a random group of unknown faces, FIRs can't be done against them, really. If it's one specific person with some significant reach in society, only then people usually pursue these cases. But even the CPIM guy, he said that what foreign policy, etc. And a few days back, the girl said, what India, kisher Bharat, kisher Videsh Niti, etc., etc. So yeah, everyone keeps notes of these things. These are not important battles to pick, really. The way our free speech condition is in society and in the law books as well, people will use it against them. That girl or that CPIM leader, it will be used against them the day someone thinks that, yeah, let's fuck them up. Otherwise, you can get away with saying these things. I would, of course, oppose throwing people into jail for saying these things, because they are just bad, evil views. And if they don't say it, they are going to be in professions that you don't know exist, or they will exist in professions without you knowing of them, and they will keep on pursuing these views in their close circles, among their colleagues or their students, etc. So it's best that we know about these people and what their views are. Unless it's a call for violence, they need not go to jail for saying what India and what foreign policy. Tanmay Bhattacharya of CPM, yes. Tanmay Bhattacharya said that what foreign policy? Is the level of retardation in the public increasing, or is it just me? Yeah. Let's start the book now. So who are these people who have written this book? Okay, first let's check out their bios. Kausik Gangopadhyay studies empirical social sciences to create an academic discourse grounded in reality. And this book is almost academic. It's academic adjacent at least, and it's coming out of Garuda Prakashan. He has authored his first book, The Majoritarian Myth, How Unscientific Social Theories Create Disharmony, from Garuda in 2024 to disseminate this discourse. And that book was an absolute phenomenal work on debunking the very idea of majoritarianism, which is used as a stick to beat up India and Hinduism on every turn of the corner. Kausik Gangopadhyay shows with a scientific way of researching and theorizing things that the idea of majoritarianism is absolutely worthless, pointless, and useless, irrelevant in India. He is an economist who earned his PhD from the University of Rochester in 2007. He's a professor at the IIM Kozhikode. He has published many articles in reputed, refereed international journals, and has co-edited book has a co-edited book published by Springer Verlag. He also enjoys writing popular articles, having published in outlets like DNA, First Post, Swarajya, and Mathrubhumi. He lives in Kozhikode with his wife and 2 children. Devabrata has been deeply interested in politics, the co-author of this book, and politics and history since childhood, initially drawn to leftist ideologies. His perspective shifted during his adolescence after observing the Ayodhya Sri Ram Temple movement, leading him to critically reevaluate Marxism. The best kind of right-wingers are always the former leftist ones, in terms of playing the narrative warfare. This prompted him to explore the role of religion and comparative theology in shaping human history. Over time, his focus expanded to sociology and social history. His research into the political, social, and cultural history of the Bengalis, along with their ongoing existential challenges, led to the publication of his first book, Bangalittoi Amader Hindutto, Amader Jatisotta o Rashtrosottar Porichoy, which means Bengaliness is our Hinduness, recognizing our ethnicity and nationality, published in 2022. The book saw a second edition in 2023, featuring an introduction by Kausik Gangopadhyay, the co-author of this book. Now, let's see who all have written the testimonials for this book. First is Tathagato Rai. He has said, brutally honest. Dr. Richard L. Benkin, a human rights activist and geopolitical commentator, has said that this book is an honest discussion of Bangladesh's past, present, and future. Abdullah Al Masood, a Bangladeshi humanist, has said that his, meaning Kausik Gangopadhyay's, objectivity and neutrality is probably the best. Request all Indians to read this book to understand Bangladesh. Dr. Sachi Ghosh Dostidar, author and distinguished service professor emeritus at State University of New York, has said, pioneering work exposing the suicidal sectarian identity of the Bengali Hindus. A small blurb of the book behind the book says, for decades, liberals like Amartya Sen have claimed Bangladesh to be the paragon of peace, harmony, and tolerance in the Indian subcontinent. The massive rise in Hindu persecution post-August 2024 has proved that the liberal narrative of Bangladesh could not have been more wrong. The book uncovers the story of Bangladesh that the alleged left had actively attempted to suppress and censor. It dispels the myth of 21st February as well as the language movement in East Pakistan. The story of Bangladesh is that of subversion of Hindus and Buddhists through legalized thefts, to waves of pogrom, to constant discrimination while paying lip service to the rhetoric of secularism. After being the victim of violence in East Pakistan and Bangladesh, East Pakistan/Bangladesh, Bengalis are now facing the loss of their identity, with the noise of Greater Bangladesh, called by Maulana Bhasani, becoming louder. The conferring of the award of the greatest Bengali to Mujibur Rahman, or the peddling of the complete distortion of history by the Encyclopedia Britannica that Bengali ethnicity was born from a massive migration of people from the Middle East, where people didn't speak Bengali, around 1400 years ago, are its two expressions. In conclusion, the book calls for safeguarding the Bengali identity and language by preventing the preventing its appropriation by the Bengali-speaking Islamists. Saptarshi saying, Dada, you said you are against government healthcare and education system because they are inherently poor in quality standard. My question is, have you read about the healthcare and education system of Singapore, Japan, and Germany? Yes, all short as small as fuck states, except Germany, which is on its way to the dogs. Singapore and Japan, everything can be done much more easily because Singapore does not really have democracy, and secondly, they are small states. Small states matter not just because of the population, because of the size, the geography itself. Think of the person on the very, very outskirts of Japan or Singapore, and think of his metaphorical as well as physical, as well as legal, as well as the conceptual distance between that man and the head of state in Singapore and Japan, versus the person on the outskirts, on the borders, the fringes of India, the distance between him and Narendra Modi. Riza Ahmed, what the fuck is Ahmed? Isn't your surname supposed to be Ahmed? Thank you for spamming my comment section because you are increasing the algorithm. It won't help red return, but it will boost my algorithm. Yeah. Professor Gangopadhyay. Now, this is Dr. Shashi Ghosh Dostidar talking about the book, okay? Professor Gangopadhyay wrote about a very important issue which is used by many of the world's fake and partisan media, sectarian politicians to discuss India for anti-indigenous politics. I like the term anti-indigenous because it must be remembered, we must keep reminding, we must keep hammering home the point that Bangladesh and Pakistan are settler colonialist societies and projects. India is the only surviving nation with indigenous faith or Hinduism, challenged by monotheists to change with brutal force for about 1,000 years. Then again, in India, majoritarianism doesn't play any role as our politicians push for regional, sub-regional, or sectarian identity, not like Muslim and this, or Christian and this, and atheist majority nations. Thus, when post-1947, Pakistan cleansed almost a quarter of her population, finding shelter in India, no quote-unquote majority protested. Bangladesh cleansed 50 million indigenous Hindus till the 2021 census, possibly over 60 million by now, with indigenous minority coming down from a third of the population to barely 6% or 7% in the world's fifth most populous nation. Did the Indian majority identify with them? Or did the majority protest killing and cleansing in Afghanistan to 0% indigenous minority, or cleansing from Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Bhutan, or Tibet, China? We thank Dr. Kausik Gangopadhyay for his pioneering work exposing the suicidal sectarian identity of the Bengali Hindus, not one like majoritarianism of monotheistic areas. Best wishes, Shubhecha. Let's see, who next? Next is by Sharadindu Mukherjee, writer, historian and writer formerly of Delhi University, former member of ICHR and ICSSR. A trained academic, Professor Gangopadhyay's focus in this book on the trauma and tragedy of the Hindus of Bengal is path-breaking. It is a welcome addition to the world of scholarships, sifting through layers of various religious, social, and political ideas and arguments, shaping up the relationship between the original inhabitants of the land, whose roots go back to the ancient days of Anga, Banga, Kalinga, and the semi-Arabized Bengali-speaking Muslims, whose origins are traced to the invasion of Bengal by Bakhtiyar Khilji and other alien invaders and preachers. Gangopadhyay has clinically demolished the ridiculous and untenable narrative propagated by the latter, while offering an academically convincing narrative. Those who indulge in this sort of suppressio veri and suggestio falsi in their mindless hatred for the heritage of the land and the sacred traditions of their ancestors, and pursue an unending enmity for the neighboring community rooted to the soil, are comparable to those who spit at the sun without realizing its consequences. To take pride in artificial identity and then trying to foist it on others, besides being ridiculous and morally unpardonable, is also politically disastrous. The author deserves fulsome praise for producing yet another thorough academic work in a short span of time. Now, Sanjeev Sanyal writes, the Bengali Hindu is now in danger of being completely and systematically erased from Bangladesh, a large part of the original homeland of the community. This is a story that will eventually impact the bits of Bengal that remain in India. Interesting, Sanjeev Sanyal thinks that only bits of Bengal will remain in India, not the full province, I guess. In his thought-provoking book, writer Kausik Gangopadhyay raises some uncomfortable questions that can no longer be evaded. Next, written by someone called Probal Roy Chaudhuri, Director of Center for New India Studies, Sister Nivedita University, Kolkata. Professor Gangopadhyay, who specializes in the studies of empirical social sciences, has always endeavored to create an academic discourse that is calibrated on truth. It was in line with this pedagogy that his earlier book, The Majoritarian Myth, was anchored on. Now, Professor Gangopadhyay and his co-author have come up with another seminal scholarly contribution on a subject whose terrain mainstream academics would not want to traverse and comment on. Having read the manuscript of the Joy Bangla Deception, I find the book to be providing an extensive yet fascinating overview of the historical, cultural, and political aspects of the historical Bengal region and the latter-day Indian state of West Bengal and the country of Bangladesh in the larger context of South Asia. It covers significant historical events of modern India like the Bengal Renaissance, the Partition, and the Bangladesh Liberation War of 1971, analyzing the contributions of Bengali Hindu stalwarts like Rabindranath Tagore and post-independent political leaders like Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. It highlights the interplay between Hindu and Muslim communities, the impact of colonialism, and the evolution of national identities. Contemporary issues such as communal tension, role of language in creating social identity, and crafting identity politics, and external influences on regional politics are also addressed within the covers of this book. While the book not only critiques the narrative of Bangladesh's independence by arguing that it continues Pakistan's Islamist ideology and challenges the portrayal of Bangladesh as a quote-unquote secular and tolerant nation, but it also highlights the persecution of minorities and the economic and cultural marginalization they suffer in post-Pakistan, East Bengal, or Bangladesh. The authors call for reclaiming Bengali identity from Islamist appropriation and advocate for a new Bengali Renaissance based on pluralistic and decolonized values. The book emphasizes the importance of cultural heritage and the ongoing struggle for social and political justice in the region. It is a must-read for young readers, researchers, and scholars with a strategic interest in the region. Shaptashi, British India was not democratic. You either need democracy or a small state or both of them. That's the ideal scenario. Only then things will work. Like it's working pretty much in China. And that also can work only when there is not much cultural homogeneity. That can work only when there is such cultural homogeneity, even racial homogeneity. The Joy Bangla Deception by Professor Kausik Gangopadhyay. No, and before asking me about comparing with other countries, explain to me why hasn't it worked so far in India? Just because it's working in other countries, it will work in India. That's the view usually critiqued by right-wingers. And that's the usual criticism that I face, that, oh, you are trying to Americanize everything. Oh, so who cares what happens in USA? Who cares what happens in Japan? So now only when it comes to big gigantic governments with a lot of authority and taxes, only then why do we all of a sudden suck the dicks of Singapore and Japan? Explain to me why it hasn't worked in India so far. The Joy Bangla Deception by Professor Kausik Gangopadhyay and Debabrata fills a void in a sincere attempt to establish the real identity of the people of Bengal. This is being said by Kanchan Banerjee, author of The Crash of a Civilization. Their clear presentation of the inner conflict of Bengali-speaking people between the heritage of Arabia, the foreign imperial imposition, and of the land of Bharat in terms of language, food, religion, and culture. Their evidence-based analysis of the history in synthesizing the identity of the people of Bengal is very comprehensive. Anyone wanting to understand how Bengal's cultural and religious history has evolved is a must-read. The authors also provide a window into the future of Bengal. And if British India's education system was really that great, it was of course great compared to those times. It was not nowhere as good as today's, because remember in Bengali who studied, who benefited under the British education system? Only the Brahmins, Boidos, and Kastos. Is the education system like that today? Sharathchandra Chattopadhyay's quote. That's where the book begins. A statement does not become a reality just because of being repeated by many people, no matter how convincingly and intensely. The combined strong voice has undeniably its own strength and considerable extent of infatuation associated with it. Once the whole atmosphere echoes a particular voice all the time, man becomes overwhelmed to believe whatever is entering his ear as the reality. Propaganda is nothing but this. Let's see the foreword now. Foreword has been written by Tathagata Roy. The extremely complex fabric of Bengali nationalism or Bengaliness is not easy to analyze or draw conclusions from. The two principal elements in this Bengaliness are language and religion, or more specifically, Islam, and these two are often opposed to each other. I say this quite consciously for two reasons. First, Bengali speakers who follow Islam, that is, Bengali Muslims, now constitute more than 70% of the total number. And secondly, they follow Islam with a devotion that is beyond the comprehension of the remaining 30%, that is, Bengali Hindus. To this general truth, an exception exists, and that is that tiny fraction of Bengali Hindus who have studied this devotion of the majority in depth. This tiny fraction never ceases to be astounded by the ignorance and naivety of their religious compatriots, the Bengali Hindus, nor to their ceaseless journey towards a collective and inevitable mass suicide. The authors of this work, Kausik, Gangopadhyay, and Devobrata, clearly belong to this minority. And for the removal of doubts, let it be said that so do I. But what about the other elements of Bengaliness, language? Its hold on the majority is not only slackening, but also it is getting more nuanced. The minority Hindus imagine it binds the two sets of Bengalis into a solid phalanx. This is where their naivety begins. Some words in the Bengali spoken in Bangladesh, such as gong, intekal, or dulabhai, are so Persian or Arabic as to be unintelligible to the Indian Hindu Bengali. As for the language becoming nuanced, one of the best examples is the phrase Joy Bangla, the very subject of the book, whose literal meaning is victory to Bengal. How is this simple phrase so nuanced? As far as I am aware, to the Bangladeshi Muslim, Bangla or Bengal means, of course, Bangladesh, with obscure hints towards the greater Bangladesh. And the Indian Bengali Hindu, in his utter confused state of mind, has little notion of what it means, apart from its being a catchy slogan or, better still, a war cry. The authors Kausik, Gangopadhyay, and Devobrata have hastened to add at the very beginning of the book that even among Bangladeshi Muslims there is a minority, however microscopic and shrinking, who really have delved into the question of language versus religion and have concluded that language ought to be at least as important as religion. However, it has so far remained not much more than a pious hope, and following the developments of August 2024, proved to be less than a will of the wisp. In delving into the questions posed above, several knots are observed, knots meaning K-N-O-T-S, and some of them are impossible to untie. Can they be cut through? I doubt that, given the immutable nature of Islam. For instance, who began the language movement? The role of Dhirendranath Datta, who incidentally hailed from my ancestors' district of Comilla, is cardinal, but is being sought to be pushed into the background because no Hindu can be given that kind of credit in Islamic Bangladesh. Secondly, how serious was the Pakistani state in annihilating its Hindu minority? And to what extent were Bengali Muslims complicit in the scheme? Were not the Bengali Hindus aware of this design? If so, what did they do about it? And many more. The authors have, in a straightforward manner, proceeded to answer these questions and have come to the conclusion that the very idea of a Bengali state called Bangladesh is a big hoax. It is just East Pakistan in a new package, old wine in a new bottle. This was true even during periods of Awami League rule and has become doubly so after August 2024. You see what a brilliant line of argument and research that Kausik, Gangopadhyay, and Devobrata have taken in this book. You see why it's so important, why this book is so important, why you must buy this book as soon as possible. Now the Tathagata Roy continues. Now it is for the reader to examine the author's arguments and see whether he or she agrees with it or not. However, in my view, the reader will not be able to avoid the conclusion that the authors have been brutally honest. That is particularly creditable considering the milieu then the author comes from, namely Bengali Hindu, who tend to get carried away more by political niceties than by cold logic. Let's start the first chapter. No, this is not the first chapter. It's a small chapter called, it's not really a chapter from the book, but it's a note from a Bengali humanist in Bangladesh. Then preface, written by Dr. Richard L. Benkin, human rights activist and geopolitical commentator. Then acknowledgements, which we won't read, and then the introduction of the book, which we will get to, and we will, if time permits and my back permits, we will get to the first chapter as well, at least the first chapter, because that's a really short and fun, interesting chapter. It's called "Who Really Started the Language Movement." Saptarshi is saying, Dada, till 1980s, government education and healthcare system was actually great. My father is a product of government education and then he became professor at IISER. How will you explain this? Two things. First of all, we don't know if he would have become an even better doctor. What did he do? He was a doctor, right? Oh, a professor. Yeah. We don't know if he would have been more knowledgeable and a better professor if he studied in a private institution which competed with other private institutions and a government institution. Secondly, Brahmin Boidya Kasta. Note from okay. Yeah, so let's check out this note from a Bengali humanist of Bangladesh. By the way, what Satvik mentioning here, that's actually a point that's more important than the two I mentioned, which is they were the remnants of the British education system. The people who were teaching there were already from the British education system, which became awesome in the first place because it was not a democracy in the first place, remember? So, for example, even after all these years of communism, socialism, shenanigans, horseshit policy after horseshit policy after horseshit policy in Bengal, why aren't we still Bihar? Why? Why do we still have something that makes us a little better than Bihar? What is that? That thing is the remnants of being rich at some point in time. So when you bring your father into the discussion, we'll have to keep in mind we are talking about an upper caste guy in a city that was rich as fuck until the 60s, was one of the crown jewels of the country. The university in Kolkata was one of the crown jewels in the whole world, and all of them in the 80s were remnants of the British education system, who did not happen to be of that quality because of democracy. They happened it because they did not have democracy. And now we have still some remnants of that education system and that old world money. Therefore, we are still not Bihar. And if even now anyone who says that no, government institutions are great, one must always study or have good options to study in good government institutions and stuff, or must be able to go to government hospitals and stuff, make it compulsory. Oh, scheduled caste, but Odhikari, they are they really real scheduled caste certificates? Because many Shahas also have scheduled caste certificates. The ones who are ghotis, who are pretty rich, did not face any partition even. Meanwhile, the Shahas who came from Bangladesh are not scheduled caste. So if someone is an adhikari, which means he had some kind of adhikara for doing pujas and yagyas, etc., how did they become scheduled caste all of a sudden? Unless you mean that they are not Brahmins or the lower jatis inside the Brahmin Varna. My point is, the day I see that politicians, government employees are sending their kids to government schools and sending their elderly parents to government hospitals, that's the day I'll be convinced that they're doing a good enough job where private schools do not need to exist anymore, and I will happily go to those schools and hospitals myself. My grandparents were also SC. Yeah, so what? When your grandparents or just their parents were getting the scheduled caste certificates, those were the times when these random Varnas and Jatis were getting scheduled caste certificates, like the Shahas of Kolkata. So yeah, how does an adhikari become a scheduled caste? Explain to me that first. Starts with a quote. I'm talking about our past. I'm talking about my ancestors. So this is a note from a Bengali humanist of Bangladesh, okay? No, I don't actually want to talk about my ancestors. I want to talk about myself. The above two lines are quoted from a poem, Ami Kingbodontir Kotha Bolchi, popular among the youth of Bangladesh, written by Abu Zafar Obaidullah. I did not even know for many years that such an inspiring poem exists in Bengali literature. I did not even need to know because I was a prisoner. The prison I was in was a madrasa. This institution has imprisoned millions of innocent children who have committed no crime. Yet, yes, they are imprisoned here. They are brainwashed around the clock and made criminally inclined, as I have witnessed myself. I remember a day in 2002. Then I was a student in the Jamia Sharia Malibag Madrasa of Dhaka. In the class, our teacher, one Maulana Ahmed, told us about the ongoing persecution of Muslims in India. He was talking about the British government hanging 14,000 Islamic scholars to death on India's Grand Trunk Road. In the same vein, he informed us about Muslims being shot and killed every day by the Indian government, mosques and madrasas being demolished, Muslims being evicted by the Indian government. In one word, this India was hell-bent on ruining the hearth and home of Muslims. Moreover, in the India described by him, hardliner Hindus were killing anyone criticizing Hinduism. I was a bookworm. A few days later, I saw a magazine published from Kolkata at an old bookstore in the Purana Paltan area of Dhaka. The name was Desh, still the go-to uh, go-to object for all Brahmins, Boitos, Kaistos of Kolkata, and the wannabe Brahmins, Boitos, Kaistos of Kolkata, the Brahmin, Boito, Kaisto, adjacent castes of Kolkata, to get any advice, any instruction on anything in life, and be it what what to consume in pop culture, who to vote for, etc. Desh is the tastemaker of Kolkata and thus the tastemaker of Bengal. The magazine had many pages, but the price was only 15 takas. I bought it. The magazine was full of writings against Hindutva, and some were even against Hinduism. The writers were all Hindus who were strongly criticizing Hinduism, and I can guess their caste right from here, even though they are not named. From their writing style, it appeared to me that none of them was writing by running away from India and sitting in another country. Rather, they were writing while being very much in India. So where was that India whose story my teacher Maulana Ahmed had told me? Was there any continent on earth where I could find the India of Maulana Ahmed? I shall narrate another incident. This was a day in one of the late months in 2023. I was in Kolkata, India. I was talking with my Indian friends. They were all leftists. They conveyed to me that they participated in a demonstration against the Israeli aggression in Gaza. They were planning to attend another demonstration for the same cause in a few days. I asked them, what did they think about Hamas? Hamas. They replied that Hamas was an organization of freedom fighters and Israel was a terrorist state. I asked them again if they knew the official name of Hamas. No, they didn't. It was the Islamic resistance movement. They were quite perplexed when I showed it to them on the internet. I demonstrated to them using Wikipedia. Advanced technologies like Wikipedia, which are somehow lost on Brahmins, Boidos, of Kaistos of Kolkata, especially if they're above 35. That Hamas were essentially engaged in religious warfare. Hamas wanted to exterminate the Jews. They sought extermination of I'm not going to say this sentence too many times, the you-know-who, as it was part of their belief in Islam. The Islam taught in Bangladeshi madrasas has teachings that approve this belief of Hamas. I was introduced to Professor Kausik Gangopadhyay a few months ago. In my interactions with him, I have found him to be mild-mannered yet insightful. He has analyzed issues like nationalism, Islamism, and politics in the context of Bangladesh. His research and analysis in the context of the state of Bangladesh and the Islamic fundamentalism and militancy under the veil of Bangladeshi nationalism is simply outstanding. His objectivity and neutrality in this context is probably the best among the Indians. I request all Indians to read this book to understand Bangladesh. Additionally, I am very happy because he has dedicated this book to the murdered bloggers of Bangladesh. One of the murdered bloggers of Bangladesh was Abhijit Roy. On February 26, 2015, on his way back from the Ekushe book fair, Ekushe meaning 21st, okay? So it was a book fair commemorating 21st February, lol. Islamic jihadists hacked him to death. Abhijit Roy's father, Professor Ajoy Roy, taught at Dhaka University. He was a person from the leftist school of thought. When I was a Madrasa student, I used to read a lot of the writings of Bangladeshi intellectuals published in the newspapers. I read Professor Ajoy Roy's writings several times. Every time I read his writings, it occurred to me that he wanted positive change in society. He wanted people to be secular and non-sectarian. He attacked the Western social system and capitalism, as he thought Western philosophy as an obstacle to human progress. Professor Ajoy Roy never attacked Islamic fundamentalism, lol. Professor Ajoy Roy's son, Abhijit Roy, did not criticize Islam as much as he criticized Hinduism, lol. But yes, he was against any institutional religion. He ran a blog site called Muktamana, literally means open-minded. Many ex-Muslims from Bangladesh used to write on his blog site. Islamic fundamentalists murdered the son of what Ajoy Roy did not take any the son of that. Islamic fundamentalists murdered the son of that Ajoy Roy who did not take any strong against Islam. When the assassins hacked Abhijit Roy to death, they were shouting Allahu Akbar. Not only in the case of Abhijit, rather whenever Islamic jihadists in Bangladesh murdered any atheist, Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, they shouted Allahu Akbar. One may note that when Muslims perform ritual slaughtering of an animal, they say Allahu Akbar. There are three types of education systems in Bangladesh. The first is a general education system. which has all subjects like science, mathematics, and English language in its curriculum. The second system is the Alia Madrasa centric education system, a type of Islamic education system run by the Bangladesh government, where science and mathematics are in the curriculum along with Islamic education. And we have something called Alia University in Bengal as well, funded by the West Bengal government, which is advocated by Hindutva socialists as well. The education system of the third kind is the Qaumi Madrasa education system. Interestingly, the global headquarters of this Qaumi Madrasa education system is located in India. It is Darul Uloom Deoband Madrasa of Uttar Pradesh. Deoband, Dev Bandana se naam aata hai Deoband. All the teachers and students of Qaumi Madrasa in Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Afghanistan follow Deoband. Follow Deoband Madrasa only. The Qaumi Madrasa provides an ultra-orthodox Islamic education system without any presence of geography, science, mathematics, or English. No, all these are simply absent from the curriculum. Instead, there is only Islam and Islam. The Islamic theory of jihad, the theories of killing non-Muslims, theory of treating captured non-Muslim women in a jihad as sex slaves, the theories of appropriating the wealth of the non-Muslims as spoils of war, all these are taught in a Qaumi Madrasa. As a student of Qaumi Madrasa, I have learned all these theories too in my textbooks. Then there are Qaumi Madrasas, also known as SFI party offices. And here we are talking about Qaumi Madrasa. Remember to get your Q and H pronunciations correct, okay? What is most astonishing is that the civil society in Bangladesh or even in India refuses to talk about the barbarity of these teachings taught in the lakhs of Qaumi Madrasas in Bangladesh or India, including Darul Uloom Madrasas. Our social leaders create a kind of stratification where the upper strata and the lower strata people live separately. Upper strata people make plays, make movies, do business, lead politics, and have executive jobs. And the lower strata people become imams in mosques, teachers in madrasas, leaders of jihad, and spread hatred and animosity among ordinary Muslims for their living. When an Indian visits Bangladesh, talks to a professor or an intellectual in Bangladesh, one would think that the professor or intellectual is a quite progressive person without any remote connection with Islamic fundamentalists. This thinking will bring disaster to Bharat. Honestly speaking, this progressive person is the greatest patron of Islamic militancy. Teachers of madrasas, imams of mosques, and jihadi leaders all operate in connivance with the so-called progressives. The progressives' job is to help Islamic terrorists by defending them and keeping them away from the mainstream of society. Therefore, they keep the jihadi madness alive in society. Again, it is also true that these university professors, come the patrons of jihad, will not let the Islamic militants or fundamentalists completely seize the state power of Bangladesh. क्योंकि उनके खुद के लिए भी power चाहिए, by the way. They wouldn't let it happen because then they would lose their job. They would have to keep beards on their faces. Their wives and daughters would have to wear burqas. It must be clear to one now how the progressive university professors themselves promote Islamic jihad up to a certain layer of society and nurture the jihadis of the society. Our social system has been like this for decades. So you see, the three levels to being a Muslim in the Indian subcontinent: the biryani, the burhanwani, and the sherwanis. So we are talking about the sherwanis here. The biryanis are in the lowest strata of society, where there's seemingly syncretic culture going on. Everyone likes biryani, everyone likes air raman, etc. And then sherwanis use some portions of the biryani crowd to further the level of the burhanwanis. Do you consider Baghaduddin Boys High School as a good school? Absolutely not. Not anymore. At some point, yes, it was awesome. I do not know whether the prison called Madrasa, where millions of children are prisoners, would ever cease to exist and stop their indoctrination in their effort to make everyone a Masood Azhar, a Hafiz Said, or an Ajmal Kasab. Nurturing malevolence and hatred in one's mind for others is extremely painful. I have personally suffered from such agony. In spite of being an imam of a mosque and principal of a madrasa in Dhaka, I left Islam. I was receiving death threats by jihadis incessantly. Finally, I had to let go of my motherland and leave Bangladesh. Fortunately, the entirety of Bangladesh is not in darkness. There are many like me who, in spite of being born in a Muslim family, are speaking against Islamic fundamentalism, risking their own lives in that process. May the hard work and effort of Professor Kausik Gangopadhyay, dear friend and author, and Devobroto bear fruit. May Islamic fundamentalism of Bangladesh remain no more. May humanism and humanity register another victory. Let all people of the Indian subcontinent celebrate the civilizational values of Bharat. This is written by Abdullah Al Masood from Hafiz, Maulana, Mufti, ex-Muslim. Oh, he was a Hafiz, a Maulana, as well as Mufti, ex-Muslim, ex-Imam, and atheist. Now the preface. তোমার আগের প্রশ্ন কি করে নেব বই পড়তে পড়তে? Dada, my whole khandan eloped from East Pakistan to West Bengal in 1971. So my parents were dirt poor, not creamy layer. Oh, তো 71 এর ইয়ে 71 এর উদ্বাস্তু. So yeah, I did not make the creamy layer argument. I'm not talking about economics here. I'm talking about Odhikari being an upper caste surname which somehow got an SC certificate out of the blue. Explain to me theologically, how does someone who have adhikara become a Dalit or become lower caste in any way? So when they are adhikari, it means they have proximity to knowledge production or knowledge itself. They were always Brahmin or Brahmin adjacent. I think they were Brahmins. They got an SC certificate somehow. So if that is the case, then they will be obviously at an advantageous position when, even if they study in horseshittiest of the horseshittiest of Bengali medium government schools even today. But that's not what happened. Your ancestors studied in government schools when they were still reaping the fruits of them being descendants of the great British education system, which did not become great because of democracy. So as far as my argument of Brahmin Boito Caste was benefiting from the British education system because of their inherent knowledge and kind of upbringing in their families, that still holds because it's adhikari. অধিকারীদের কুলিনরা ব্রাহ্মণ মনে করে না. Yeah. It doesn't matter that Kulins don't consider them adhikaris. Everyone else considers them Brahmin. In 1974, the new nation of Bangladesh, through its parliament and under the leadership of its Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, completed its review of Pakistani laws and determined which Pakistani laws were not in conflict with the values of the new nation and would be adopted as Bangladeshi law. Let's see who wrote the preface. So the preface was written by Dr. Richard L. Benkin. Among those that, if we consider today's schools, then show me the evidence. Show me how it benefits us today, or show me how it has benefited us in the last 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, when the quality of government schools have gone on decreasing further. So now the only non-convent schools which work are like DPS, DAV, Heritage to some extent I've heard, and of course Ramakrishna Mission schools. So just your grandfather studying in a government school in the 80s cannot be that much of a consequence, because all of the people who fucked our state up, by the way, also studied in those government schools only. So who knows, maybe if they had studied in some good private schools, they would understand economics and be pro-free market. Among those that they determined were in resonance those laws which were in consonance with Bangladeshi values was Pakistan's Enemy Property Act, which Bangladesh adopted in whole as its own, making only a name change from Enemy Property Act to Vested Property Act. Why is this significant? Because the EPA/VPA is a directed anti-Hindu law. Sure, on its surface it sounds non-sectarian. Those who leave the country for another state forfeit their property rights, and anything they leave behind can be seized by the state. In Pakistan and later Bangladesh, however, it was applied only if the person fled to India. Oddly, Bangladeshis won their independence with the power of the Indian military. So it is unclear how only a few years later that same benefactor was called an enemy unless we acknowledge the basic anti-Hindu animus underlying it. In fact, according to Dhaka University's Dr. Abul Barkat, that famous statistic, one of the foremost authorities on the Vested Properties Act, the law was used to seize about 70% of all Hindu-owned land in Bangladesh by the 1990s, and it still is the basis for illicit seizure of Hindu land, which is then distributed to political cronies who in many cases were responsible for the Hindu owners fleeing for their lives. So much for the simplistic notion that Bangladesh was born as a moderate Muslim nation that would treat its Hindu citizens better than Pakistan does. And so much for the notion that the father of Bangladesh, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, was any different than the Pakistani rulers who jailed him when it comes to eliminating Hindus and Hinduism. And that goes to the very heart of the book by Dr. Kausik, Gangopadhyay and Devobruto. Since gaining independence in 1971, Bangladesh has benefited from global wishful thinking that has given academic, diplomatic, and other experts an excuse to ignore its brutal ethnic cleansing of Hindus and the fact that it is not the product of any political party or social group. This book's very title tells us that the notion of Bangladesh's break from Pakistan, signaling a rejection of Pakistan's oppressive and anti-Hindu nature, is nothing more than a deception that people blithely accepted and which continues to have deadly consequences today. Worse, elites still accept the deception rather than work to find out the sad truth. Shortly after the August 2024 coup that ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, an organization called me and said that they were having a seminar about recent events in Bangladesh, including the situation for Hindus and geopolitical implications. They asked if I would be their keynote speaker, and I accepted. But a couple of weeks later, the same organization messaged me saying that because quote unquote things had come down in Bangladesh, they no longer would be having that seminar and moved on to other topics instead. World leaders and other elites have swallowed the fiction that Hindus and other minorities are safe in today's Bangladesh, have uncritically accepted the lie that Chief Advisor Muhammad Yunus champions diversity and democracy. As someone who lost family in the Nazi Holocaust against the Jewish people and grew up among survivors of that atrocity, I understood from an early age that the Nazis were not the real reason that the Holocaust existed. Rather, it was all those quote unquote good people who chose to turn a blind eye to it, who drove the trains to the death camps because they were just making a living, who even tried to explain it with the Nazis' own propaganda that there was an endemic nature to European Jew hatred, not among all Europeans, but among enough, just as there is an endemic nature to Bangladeshi hatred of Hindus, not among all Bangladeshis, but among enough. Bangladesh might not be Nazi Germany, but to the victims it hardly matters. Hindus have been reduced from almost a third of the East Pakistan population in 1951 to around 1 in 15 today. And while Hindu blood ran in the streets, an uncaring world heaped praise on moderate Bangladesh. The only antidote to this deadly ignorance outside of activism is truth. Only through the work of scholars like Dr. Gangopadhyay can people read the unvarnished truth. Only through the works of scholars like Dr. Gangopadhyay can there be an honest discussion of Bangladesh's past, present, and future without the fear of hyperbolic attack or even the loss of one's position. Moreover, even if today's elites continue to prefer ignoring this inconvenient truth, it's important to correct the historical record as Dr. Gangopadhyay does. Over a decade ago, the authoritative Pew Research Center sampled Muslims worldwide and found that Bangladeshi Muslims were among the most religiously conservative and supportive of jihad. For instance, 26% believe that suicide bombing is sometimes or always justified, twice the percentage of Pakistani Muslims, and more than Muslims from any other country except Afghanistan and Egypt or from Palestinian territories. About an equal percentage of Pakistani and Bangladeshi Muslims want Sharia to be the law of the land, and almost half favor executing apostates from Islam, while they reward apostates to Islam. In other words, we must forego fantasies about anti-Hindu violence being contrary to what most Bangladeshis are willing to tolerate. If we do not, we will continue finding ways to enable it. Thank you, Dr. Gangopadhyay and Devobroto, for taking an important step toward ending the carnage that has reduced Bangladeshi Hindus from almost a third of the population to about 1 in 15 while the world ignored it. Dr. Richard L. Benkin, human rights activist and geopolitical commentator, Chicago, USA. Now, acknowledgements are not that important. We'll get to the introduction section now. Yeah, let's see what Saptarshi is saying. My mind can't fathom one thing. Japan can have great government education, but India can't. Both are democracies. Physical landmass is not a convincing logic. Okay. Become a district magistrate versus become a chief secretary and see whether it matters or not. Have a band. Start a band and have 5 people in your band and also run an orchestra parallelly, okay? Which will have 15 people, 25 people in your orchestra, okay? See if that makes a difference. You'll very soon realize how right I am. I know many Biswas and Sarkars who are SC as well as many were general caste. Yes, all of them who got scheduled caste certificates are probably fake ones. They did some shenanigans when these fake certificates were getting distributed among random people and they took them. How can you be of the same surname and be both upper caste and lower caste at the same time? Unless we get to the age-old problem of some caste being higher caste in some places and stuff. Yes, village to village, the hierarchy positions, ranks of different castes varied. But in Kolkata itself, in Bengal itself, the same caste is both scheduled caste as well as general. So if you're, by the way, Saptarshi, if your mind can't fathom how can Japan have great government education, then what is left? What do you think Japan has that India doesn't have? Awareness. वहां पे तो एनीमे होता है, कॉलोनाइजेशन भी हुआ है, कॉलोनाइज एजुकेशन सिस्टम भी है, इंग्लिश एजुकेशन भी है, सब कुछ है वहां पे इंडिया में। जो है इंडिया पे जो खराब चीज है सब कुछ वहां पे है, इंडिया में जो अच्छी चीजें है सब कुछ वहां पे है। What they don't have is a big landmass which has big gigantic population and has cultural racial homogeneity, which India also doesn't have. All the things which are required to run run a country or an organization very, very easily, which Japan can, we can't. And since they have cultural homogeneity, they will also be a high trust society. Their caste system died long back. Now there are different status groups, obviously, in different ways, but no one calls them castes and does research on them. Plus, all their education, all their journals, etc., are funded by the Japan government themselves. They fund academics all over the world to write on Japan. They don't say that who cares who talks and reads about Japan. हम तो छाती चौड़ा करके निकल पड़ेंगे और सब अचानक से रैंडमली 30 साल बाद बोलते फिरेंगे जापान कितना बढ़िया कंट्री है, जापान कितना बढ़िया कंट्री है. Behind every person saying Japan कितना बढ़िया country है is 30 years of research articles, journals funded by the Japan government. Okay. English education in Japan, their medium of education is Japanese. Okay, so they don't understand English. They are at the top of the fields in every Western art field, Western art field. Do you think all that is happening without knowing English? Making anime, being probably the very best in Western classical, all of that happened without knowing English? Or did all of that happen by running away from English, saying, who cares? वो तो oppressor का भाषा था, हम नहीं पढ़ेंगे कुछ के. Japan industrialized in the 1900s, yeah. No, even if we had industrialized in the 1900s, even then we would not be able to, we would still be in the same situation today because of policies of Nehru, CPIM, etc., and the way we think today. How can the same group be both upper caste and lower caste? You make a good argument for another caste census. Yes. Their English is terrible, right? So how did they? So they consumed all Western media in Japanese, right? Japan was never fully colonized. Great. उतना छोटा देश colonize भी नहीं कर पाया. Japan doesn't have victimhood mindset. They are warriors. No one has any mindset. Okay. Everyone is taught a bunch of bullshit, the narrative, the discourse, of which the servants are the general populace. 99.99% of human beings are gullible nut jobs. They are gullible and prone to believing anything that is believed around them. No one is inherently a warrior or inherently a weak commie. They produce knowledge and on their own and translate it in their language too. Yeah. Knowledge production did not happen when colonization was on and the British were oppressing them, etc., or America, whoever. And now they are allegedly a vassal state of USA, right? So it seems it's turning out to be pretty good being a vassal state of USA for those right-wingers who want us to fear and hate USA with all our guts. At the same time, Japan is great, who are, by the way, vassals of USA. At the same time, USA is bad. So it's a triangle of mental gymnastics done by a monkey. Sample size were 2 to 3 people, yes. India should create animation. The best way to propagandize another country's society. Yeah, and then get FIRs from Bajrang Dal. Kendriya Vidyalaya ki bhalo school, yes. They teach world-class education in their language. That doesn't need knowing English unless there is a necessity of translation. Yes. How is that happening? They translated all of their books into Japanese long time back. Today, for example, in social science, you cannot study in anything other than English. You cannot. There are no books. Vedas Gupta, yes, it's a vassal state of USA. Learning English and learning in English are two very different things. And why couldn't our great professors who studied in great government institutions translate all these books into Bengali for all these years? Maybe free market would have helped them. Okay, so introduction. It starts with a quote from Amartya Sen. And in terms of the kind of narrowness of Hindu thinking, it is not reflected in a similar narrowness of Muslim thinking. in Bangladesh. Studied in the famous government institution called Presidency College. Ah. The 1971 Liberation War in Bangladesh is a watershed moment in the history of the Indian subcontinent. With the creation of a new nation, Bangladesh, hailed as a Bengali nation, the language Bengali speak is Bangla, but rendered as Bengali in the book as it is far more understandable for non-Bengalis. Emerging out of East Pakistan based on its demand to use Bangla as their own language. This incident created a great euphoria in India, particularly among the left liberals who considered and still do that this liberation war and the consequent birth of a secular nation as proof that people of Bangladesh are secular minded and rooted in their indigenous culture. We require a short recollection of the history of the creation of the Indian Republic to make sense of the significance of the story of Bangladesh in the left narrative. The provincial elections were conducted during the last days of British Raj in January 1946 to elect members of the legislative councils of the Indian provinces under the Government of India Act. Under this act, there were separate electorates for Hindus and Muslims along with representatives for Europeans and native Indian rulers of the princely states. The Congress emerged the strongest by winning the lion's share of the general seats, effectively non-Muslims, while the Muslim League cemented its claim as the sole mouthpiece of the Indian Muslims, winning 87% of the Muslim seats. The agenda of the Muslim League was the partition of undivided India into India and Pakistan, to carve out a homeland for the Muslims of undivided India for their being a separate nation, which was contested by the Congress. The partition itself was a very tragic affair. It is possibly the bloodiest affair in the 20th century that has been normalized. The beginning of this affair started in Kolkata exactly 1 year before the independence of India on 16th August 1946, a day on which the Muslim League called for direct action. Eventually, this day turned out to be one of the worst orchestrated genocides in Bengal. The Muslim League, led by Surawardi, amassed criminals from outside, and his government paralyzed the administration by transferring capable, unbiased police officers by the more subservient ones overnight in almost all the police stations of Kolkata. The idea of the genocide was to compel the Hindus of Hindu-majority Kolkata, the most economically prosperous city of the British Empire after London, to migrate out of the city and thereby claim it within East Pakistan. An official estimate reveals that 4,000 people were killed, at least 10,000 were wounded, and numerous women were brutally tortured in the first 4 days. The number of people rendered homeless was more than 100,000. The genocide at Noakhali during October 1946 surpassed the horrors of Kolkata by several notches. However, these dark episodes became simply a trailer for the massive violence and partition horrors that undivided India witnessed in the following year and continued in Pakistan for several years. The Congress Party eventually gave in to the demand for partition. Nevertheless, the flames of violence out of this partition project engulfed the entire Indian subcontinent. What started in Bengal soon infected other states of India, including Bihar and Punjab. The partition of India, after the unveiling of the partition plan in June 1947, prompted some of the bloodiest riots yet, and made it one of the most tragic phenomena of the 20th century for the world. Eyewitness accounts describe nightmarish scenes of unspeakable brutality, trains full of corpses arriving at stations, neighbors turning on neighbors, women raped and abducted, children killed in front of parents, villages and city quarters burnt and looted. It is impossible to have any certain figure regarding the number of casualties of this gorgeous tale, particularly during such a chaotic time in a culture where record keeping was not prioritized. Historians agree at least 1 million people and perhaps up to 2 million people lost their lives in the chaos and communal slaughter surrounding partition. Between 10 and 20 million people were displaced across the new borders in the largest mass migration in history. While no advocate could argue the case of innocence for any party in the tale, the Hindus and Sikhs, Muslims, the British Raj, the Congress, and so on, it was essentially an outcome of the actualization of the Lahore Resolution of the Muslim League in 1940. After the massive movement of people, the demography changed considerably for the subcontinent. The population of Hindus in West Pakistan in 1941 was 14.6%, which dropped to 1.6% in 1951 because of the huge migration of Hindus to India. On the other hand, the population of Hindus in East Pakistan fell from 28% in 1941 to 21.1% in 1951. The Muslim population in present-day India was 12% approximately in 1941, but it came down to 9.8% in 1951. These statistics imply an obvious asymmetry in this tale of migration, with many more Hindus emigrating out of Pakistan than the number of Muslims who emigrated out of India. All these have led to a common understanding among the Hindus of India that Indian Muslims are the root cause of partition, and the Muslims should have no claims in the divided India. This popular understanding could imply that India is largely the homeland of the people of indigenous culture from undivided India. Then, India should have its culture and governance based on its indigenous civilizational values, unmoved by the colonial impositions. It would also be myopic to expect that any significant demographic change leading to a significant decline in the number of people from indigenous religions would not have any long-term implications regarding the culture of the region. The examples of Pakistan and Bangladesh are sufficient to claim that an assault on demography leads to subjugation of indigenous culture to religious dogma-driven imperialism. In 1971 came in this background. 1971 came in this background. A strong sense of disaffection grew between the people of East Pakistan and the government of Pakistan when the government of Pakistan declined the outcome of the election. The Pakistani army retaliated in the most high-handed way, with demoniacal thirst for persecution and brutality, leading to a massive refugee crisis with about 10 million Hindus migrating to India. As the humanitarian crisis continued to grow, the Indian government was forced to respond militarily. The Indian army, under the capable leadership of Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw, defeated the Pakistani military apparatus completely, with the public surrender of 93,000 soldiers on 16 December 1971. Honoring the popular sentiment of the people of East Pakistan, the Indian government facilitated the making of a new nation, Bangladesh, under the leadership of Mujibur Rahman. Now, a subchapter begins called The Left Liberal Narrative of 1971. The left liberal is characteristically alarmed by the proposition of the common understanding that demographic change leads to obliteration of indigenous culture in the Indian subcontinent, South Asia in American academic parlance. The left liberals consider the Hindu culture to be oppressive and harmful to humankind in general, and India in particular. Consequently, they have been trying to erase all traces of Hinduness in their narrative of Indian nationhood. Going a step further, they like to deny the identity of India as a civilizational state and often call this land South Asia to deny it of its civilizational values. They desperately need to counter the above-mentioned understanding of the importance of Indian civilizational values to governance. In their own world, they rely upon their unscientific social theories that tell them the irrelevance of history. They, in effect, think that their theory shall come true irrespective of the historical experience, but can be unburdened by what has been, and therefore they do not care about the reality bites. The narrative makers among the left liberals, however, know that the common human consciousness has attraction for reality checks. Science is simply common sense at its best, that is, rigidly accurate in observation and merciless to unreal thinking. Therefore, they desperately need at least one example from the real world consistent with their own narrative. So, give me one real world example of a country which is diverse, culturally, racially, theologically, and is pretty big, and state-funded hospitals and schools run really well there. Otherwise, you are just an unscientific guy who's waiting for good things to fall out of the sky, who's doing wishful thinking. Otherwise, their narrative may find no takers among people with a sense of scientific understanding. Since any human culture often banks upon imitation of the elite by the masses, the narrative then may face rejection from the population. The highlighting of Bangladesh serves exactly this purpose for the left liberals. If the population of Bangladesh loved language over religion, then religion could not be considered as a salient identity anymore. Religion is an important part of a culture and is the source of ethics too. If that part of culture is negated, the secular liberal culture finds a green pasture to conquer with particularly left liberal ethics to replace the religious ethics. In fact, a language-based secular nation by a Muslim majority people helps the left liberals portray the notion that secularity is a culture-dependent phenomenon, as secular Muslim majority nations globally are or were scarce. Since the left liberals generally believe in universality of their policies over cultural backgrounds, they consider Bangladesh a validation of their principles. Hence the insane love for Bangladesh. In the context of the Indian subcontinent, the Bangladesh narrative has another implication. Pakistan is a phenomenon that happened through dominance of religious identity and separatism of Muslims of undivided India. However, the left liberals often call the creation of Pakistan through the partition of India in 1947 as a British ploy of which the Muslim League was simply a stooge, without any large-scale narrative among the Muslim community for a nation. That's the accusation. If Bangladesh is considered a secular yet Muslim majority state, it portrays dominance of the linguistic identity over the religious identity. In this case, an active negation of Islamic identity takes place in a Muslim majority country to become a secular one and embrace people of different religious identities. Left liberals view the creation of Bangladesh as a testament to this phenomenon, as the same Muslim community stands for secularity in Bangladesh, negating their Muslim commonness with West Pakistan. Moreover, the left liberals belittle the importance of religion in the formation of culture. They reduce religion just as another identity of the person instead of the they call it just another identity of the person instead of considering it to be the foundation of ethics for a person or a society. They portray Bangladesh, founded upon language and secularity, as an example of prevailing of the language identity over the religious identity. However, the fact remains that the leaders of Muslims of Bengal, especially of the present-day territory of Bangladesh, were responsible for the movement for Pakistan. The organized killings in Kolkata, the genocide of Noakhali and other genocides happened there afterwards. A genocide cannot happen without some kind of social sanction for it. For example, the Nazis ruling over Germany perpetrated the Holocaust during the Second World War. Their social theory, as written in Mein Kampf, justified the eradication of the Jews. The post-war German governments have banned Mein Kampf to distance themselves from that ideology. Any remote relationship to Nazi ideology is unqualifiedly and exceptionally denounced in Germany even today. The German people cater to negation of a part of their own history to distance the present generation from any ownership of the Holocaust. Bangladesh did not have to go through this process of repudiation of their past, but still does not suffer from any infamy. What a great line. Bangladesh did not have to go through this process of repudiation of their past, but still does not suffer from any infamy. In fact, the Muslim League Prime Minister of Bengal, whose party's actions and covert approval of whose government facilitated the massacre in Kolkata on 16th August 1946, is a revered figure in Dhaka with a garden called Surawardi Udyan, named after him in the most prominent location of the capital city. The Muslim League icons of the past, who are responsible for one of the bloodiest events of the 20th century, the partition of India, have remained as icons in Bangladesh. The 21st day of February is the National Day of Bangladesh. Presently, the day is celebrated as the International Mother Language Day worldwide, after being announced by the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organizations, UNESCO, in 1999, later recognized formally by the United Nations General Assembly in 2007. As per this UN resolution, the celebration of Mother Language Day is part of a broader initiative to quote-unquote promote the preservation and protection of all languages used by people of the world. Why is this emphasis on language? The United Nations explains, quote, languages are the most powerful instruments of preserving and developing our tangible and intangible heritage. Heritage में religion घुसाओ तब heritage नहीं है. All moves to promote the dissemination of mother tongues will serve not only to encourage linguistic diversity and multilingual education, but also to develop fuller awareness of linguistic and cultural traditions throughout the world, and to inspire solidarity based on understanding, tolerance, and dialogue. End quote. In sum, Bangladesh has become the example of pluralism, tolerance, and dialogue to the world in the left liberal narrative. Without even an ounce of token denouncement, even the token denouncement is not being done by Bangladesh. Now, denouncement of its own past full of genocide and atrocities on minorities. This is how successful the left liberal narrative is today in the world. Who cares what leftists say? The story of Bangladesh from a factual lens. We examine in this book the reality of this left liberal narrative of Bangladesh. Let us present briefly our version of the story which has been presented in this book in detail. Bengali-speaking Muslims were no less separatist compared to their counterparts in other parts of India when the All India Muslim League launched the two-nation theory on the Indian subcontinent and sought a separate homeland for the Indian Muslims. Bengal was the only province with a Muslim League government. The Congress was reluctant to yield to this demand of the Muslim League, who decided to create a Muslim veto through the threat of extreme violence and total collapse of law and order. Perpetration of these atrocities made the British Raj and the Congress Party, arguably the prime players of politics in the Indian subcontinent during the 1940s, understand that unless they give in to the Muslim League demand, the independence of India would have to wait much longer. Bengali-speaking Muslims were at the forefront of creating this Muslim League veto of violence by carrying out the Great Calcutta killings and the genocide at Noakhali during the months of August and October of 1946, respectively. Once Pakistan was created with two geographically separated regions of East Pakistan and West Pakistan, the coterie calling the shots in the Pakistani politics was largely Punjabi Muslims of West Pakistan. At the one end, the economic disparity between both the branches of Pakistan was quite high, which people of East Pakistan resented. The share of power enjoyed by the erstwhile Muslim League leaders of East Pakistan in the new nation was quite low. A West Pakistani, mainly Punjabi coterie imposed their decision on almost every matter, while offering minimal share of political power with the East Pakistanis. One of those decisions was the imposition of Urdu as an official language during the initial few years. The significant Hindu minority, with their considerable electoral strength remaining in spite of disempowerment over time, was quite concerned as the Bengali language was the formative element of their cultural milieu. They wholeheartedly opposed it. A section of Bengali-speaking Muslims was educated in Bengali medium schools, as most of the teachers were Hindus during the pre-partition times. They saw Urdu as a threat to their economic opportunities, like landing a clerical or teaching job. The overbearingness of the Pakistani coterie made the situation more volatile and eventually led to some deaths by police firing on 21st February 1952. Meanwhile, the bulk of Muslim League from pre-partition Bengal, who broke away to call themselves Awami Muslim League, found a burning political issue at hand through these protests. They pursued this route to anoint themselves as the true representatives of East Pakistan. Electorally, they could not capture power as the non-Muslims in Pakistan, understandably, because the non-Muslims of Pakistan used to trust others over this breakaway faction of the Muslim League. They rechristened themselves as the Awami League, dropping the Muslim identity in their effort to win over the non-Muslims. The Pakistani administration eventually backtracked and granted Bengali the same status as that of Urdu through their constitution in 1956 as official language. Bengali since then enjoyed the status of an official language. Pakistan had army rule for many years since the late 1950s and almost the entirety of the 1960s, but the status granted to Bengali remained stable, including in the 1962 Pakistan constitution promulgated by General Ayub Khan. The language issue subsided and did not figure anywhere as a significant item in the agenda of the Awami League since then. On the contrary, Bengali inscriptions are present in all Pakistani monuments of national significance located even in West Pakistan, such as Minare Pakistan, Lahore, Mazar-e Quaid, Karachi. Bengali language was used in Pakistani passports, banknotes, coins, and postage stamps. They even raped a famous Bengali actress from Bangladesh at one of the farmhouses owned by the brother of a Pakistan Supreme Court judge. A popular resentment happened during the 1960s against the military establishment running the Pakistani government, which forced the military establishment to run a credible election of the National Assembly of Pakistan. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, often called Mujib, rose to prominence on this occasion by rabble-rousing against the West Pakistani coterie. He led the Awami League to an unprecedented victory in 1970, sweeping East Pakistan completely. His party's success in this election was built on a political campaign popularly known as the 6-point movement. None of the 6 points focused on language. They were all about regional autonomy, demanding more economic and political power for the people of East Pakistan. This 6-point movement was, Awami League ideologues argue, in tune with the Lahore Resolution of 1940, calling for regional autonomy for Muslims of undivided India. Not surprisingly, Mujib himself made reference to Karbala, a prominent phrase of Islamic history. I guess it's supposed to be there are plenty of spelling mistakes in the book, which happens in a smaller publication. A prominent phase of Islamic history where two Muslim sides fought against each other for being the true successor of the movement. to indicate the East Pakistani movement. The ruling coterie in Pakistan did not like the victory of Mujib, as they were reluctant to concede more powers to East Pakistan. They did what they had always done, a suspension of democracy through the imposition of army rule. For the Pakistani army, the backbone of power for Mujib was the wholehearted support of the non-Muslim minorities, mostly Hindu, towards his party. The army unleashed unprecedented violence towards Hindus. About 2.5 million Hindus died under horrible conditions, with their women being subjected to severe persecution. This industrial scale of violence created a huge exodus of Hindus to India. Now they start coming to India, estimated at 10 million, leading to severe economic strain on India. Then a poor third world country who had an obnoxious experience of battling with hunger and starvation in the previous decade. India reacted to the problem slowly but decisively. The Indian army was mobilized by the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi to East Pakistan. The Pakistani army collapsed, quite contrary to their own expectations. Mujib realized that he had to propose an acceptable idea to the Indian government to have East Pakistan declared as a separate country. Mujib did not hesitate to pursue the best idea under those circumstances, which was to call it a language-based nation friendly to India and inimical to Pakistan. He, however, understood the inner pulse of the country and knew that the Bengali language constituted a small part of the aspirations of this country. He subtly kept the Muslimhood of his nation alive while giving a lip service to secularism. Pakistanis of East Pakistan thereby became Bengalis during 1971-72. People who were Pakistanis up until 15th December 1971, on 16th December, all of a sudden, they are all Bengalis. The inner culture, what a great way to point this out. Oh, no ink in this pen, wait. I have to underline this. Pakistanis become Bengalis all of a sudden. The inner culture, of course, did not change with a new name. Pakistan is a nation founded upon Islamism to create a new Medina for the Indian Muslims. Bangladesh became a nation of Bengali-speaking Muslims. Over time, the term Bengali as an identity has come to mean in Bangladesh the Bengali-speaking Muslims exclusively, rather than becoming a secular identity. This has happened in a variety of ways through economics, culture, politics, and demographics. Economically, the Hindus of Bangladesh have continued to remain at the receiving end of the governmental policies by the Bangladesh government over time. One of the biggest weapons of systemic immiseration of the Hindus was the Enemy Property Act in East Pakistan. This act allowed ill-intentioned people to capture the properties of the Hindus over time. The trend continued even after Bangladesh became a republic. The newly elected government of Bangladesh, led by Mujib, did not even repeal the act described above, and later, when the government abrogated it because of popular pressure, in spite of its abrogation, the government brought back the act in a new avatar of the Vested Property Act. Now, one might ask, how did this popular pressure happen if most of Bangladesh is jihadi? So we know that this is not in fact popular pressure, it's just some pressure from global secularists as well as some secularists in Bangladesh. These acts have robbed Hindus of approximately half of their land after the creation of Bangladesh. Abuse of these acts is so rampant that Bengali-speaking Muslims have captured lands of many Hindu freedom fighters too, through this route. Language is a vehicle as well as a memory bank of a culture. Bengali language was born out of Indic culture with more than 90% of words coming from Sanskrit roots. A cultural imperialism would therefore target language as observed in Bangladesh. The race to Islamize the Bengali language through massive import of words from Arabic, Persian, Urdu is accelerating over time. Rabindranath Tagore, the cultural icon of Bengalis, denounced these efforts to insert words artificially and hijack the language. He did it repeatedly and assertively. Remarkably, it had gotten much worse since his times. It has gotten much worse since his times. In a decade after Tagore's time, the number of such words was not even 2,000, but today it is 9,000 and counting. There has been considerable effort in the cultural apparatus to negate the non-Muslims as cultural icons of Bangladesh. Kazi Nazrul Islam, a person not born in present-day Bangladesh, is celebrated as the national poet of Bangladesh for his Muslimhood. While Tagore's song is the national anthem for Bangladesh, serious agitations in Bangladesh's intellectual discourse happen periodically to rob Tagore's song from having that status. The cultural imperialism has other manifestations like erasing the long history of non-Muslim literatures from education and aggression towards the festivals of non-Muslims to diminish their significance. The education system has cleansed the treacherous role of Islamist groups like Jamaat-e-Islami, as well as minimized or even erased the undisputable role of India to usher liberation to them during the liberation movement. This is probably what will happen to Balochistan as well. It may here be noted that Hindus in Bangladesh are viewed as agents and advocates of India in the common social tropes. The non-Muslims have become a political target in Bangladesh. As they are being cornered in economic and cultural domains, they are migrating out en masse, several hundreds every day for decades after decades. Their falling population share from around 15% or so in 1971 to below 8% in 2022 is exacerbating the decline of their losing political clout as a vicious cycle. The common social trope in Bangladesh is that India is responsible for all their problems, just like USA is responsible for all our problems, according to our right-wingers and leftists as well. And the Hindus of Bangladesh are effectively agents of India. Naturally, the Islamist mob targets them regularly, particularly during elections and festivals. Awami League is often considered a comparatively pro-Hindu political party in Bangladesh, but there is no dearth of atrocities on Hindus by Awami League supporters as well, which essentially shows the lack of any political influence of the non-Muslims. Why is Joy Bangla called a deception? Here we begin a new subchapter. Bengal was one of the most advanced provinces in British India, culturally, politically, and economically. If not the most advanced one, after long centuries of colonization, the revival of indigenous Indian, often called Indic culture, happened in Bengal during the 19th and 20th century. The phenomenon is known as the Bengal Renaissance. One of the foremost persons of this Bengal Renaissance is Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, a Sanskrit scholar who turned into an educator and a social reformer of Bengal. He created a new smart primer for learning Bengali and developed books for children's easy reading. The love for mother tongue is rooted in Bengali culture and often considered as the foundation of the Bengal Renaissance of the 19th and 20th centuries. Vidyasagar is most responsible for institutionalizing that love for language into a mass movement through establishment of many schools throughout Bengal. Bankim Chandra Chatterjee and Michael Madhusudan Datta manifested their love for Bengali language, two authors who were the absolute favorites of Savarkar. Both started their literary career by venturing into English literature, but soon turned back to create a high-standard Bengali literature. Both created compositions strongly rooted in Indic culture. This was the high peak of the Bengal Renaissance, when numerous personalities were working in many domains to decolonize Bengali thinking. Rabindranath Tagore, the ultimate phenomenon of Bengali love for intellect and aesthetics, won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1913. It was an outstanding achievement for Tagore, as he was the first Asian to have won this most prestigious award. The contemporary most well-known poet of the Indian subcontinent was Allama Iqbal, a distinguished poet, philosopher, scholar in his own right, who used to write poetry in Persian. When Tagore was once asked why he had won the Nobel Prize for Literature and Allama Iqbal had not, Tagore replied, "Probably because I write in my mother tongue and Iqbal doesn't." This highlights the love for indigenous culture among the Bengalis of those times, of which the use of mother tongue is only one expression. Jagadish Chandra Bose and Satyendranath Bose were famous scientists of those times with international reputation. Both promoted the use of mother tongue in scientific education. All these demonstrate that Bengali was not simply the mother tongue but the essence of indigenous culture and the proof of decolonization for the Bengalis. Since Bengalis considered pluralism and tolerance as a mark of decolonization, the love of mother tongue was a symbol of progressive attitude to the Bengalis. Joy Bangla, Victory to Bengal, would therefore be the essential expression of a progressive, pluralistic, and decolonized attitude marked by understanding, tolerance, and dialogue. The nationalistic Bengalis at the time of the Bengal Renaissance considered their nationalism as an expression of that progressive, pluralistic decolonization. Let us investigate if Bangladesh, the creator of the Joy Bangla slogan, could pass the decisive test of this progressive, pluralistic, decolonized attitude. This is classic Kausik Gangopadhyay style of writing, guys. He proposes theories, tests them in the book itself. Is Bangladesh an example of Bangladeshi Bengali nationalism? If we consider any linguistic nationalism in Europe, adherents of different religious denominations are not meant to have a separate identity. For example, the Germans are one people without being separated into majority and minority. The Catholics and Protestants in Germany both call themselves Germans and use the same language. Their cultures are largely the same, and any reported incidents of violence against any denomination is unusual. No German is called out an agent of Italy for being Catholic instead of belonging to a Protestant denomination. There is no difference between them with respect to attire worn based on religious reasons. This basic feature of any nationalism stands violated in Bangladesh, where Hindus, along with a handful of Christians and Buddhists, are understood to be the minorities, implying their distinct identity in spite of having the same language. The dresses for women are quite different. More importantly, this difference is aggravating over time, with Muslim women donning religious attire more and more instead of their local attire. For example, exiled Bangladeshi writer Taslima Nasreen shared a photo in social media that shows a group of young men and women, with all women wearing sari and bindi, a colored dot on the forehead. She added that this is a snap of her classmates, fourth-year students of Moymansinghok Medical College during the 1980s. This is unimaginable in today's Bangladesh, with almost all Muslim students and even many Muslim teachers and professors wearing hijabs and niqabs. The periodic brutal violence against the minorities, chronicled in chapters 9 and 10, bears testimony to othering of the minority Bengalis by majority Bengalis in Bangladesh. Any nation loves to have its nationals on its land. However, after the establishment of independent Bangladesh, a Bangladeshi diplomat and prominent intellectual of the new Bengali nation, Emar Akhtar Mukul, said to refugees from East Bengal in Kolkata, quote, "You have provided us shelter and offered us support, considering us one of your own folks. We therefore offer you our gratitude. This gratitude, however, does not mean that those of you who have come to India by crossing the border in 1947, 50, 58, 62, 65 would be able to go back to live at the land of your birth, as Bangladesh has become independent. I presented to you the crude reality. You would only suffer from psychological agony if you dream of fantastic, unreal things, just like good public services." In other words, Bangladesh, supposedly a Bengali nation, discourages the Bengalis of Kolkata and West Bengal in general, who were born and brought up in the eastern parts of Bengal, now known as Bangladesh, but later forced to migrate out to India, compelled by massive violence during or after partition, to reclaim their rightful place in the land of their birth. It can only suggest that because they are non-Muslims, those people are excluded from Bangladesh's Bengali identity. Understandably, Bangladesh is not an example of secular Bengali nationalism at this moment. But can we call it nationalism for Bengali-speaking Muslims either? This is a more nuanced and complex question. However, if we are already here, then we accept the following two things unequivocally. Firstly, the Bengali identity of a Bengali-speaking Indian is quite different from the Bengali identity of Bangladesh. This isn't just an innocent mix-up like Shakespeare's Comedy of Errors involving Antipholus of Ephesus and Antipholus of Syracuse. It carries major socio-political consequences. A strong undercurrent exists among Bengalis of a certain echelon to highlight the linguistic similarity between West Bengal and Bangladesh, in contrast to the linguistic dissimilarity of West Bengal and the other Indian states. Mujib told Annoda Shankar Rai, a noted Bengali author and poet, in private that Joy Bangla is an expression of a secular Bengaliness for Bengalis of India and Bangladesh. Perhaps motivated by that thinking, the portal for various social welfare schemes of the West Bengal government is called Joy Bangla. It is also a popular slogan of the present political establishment in West Bengal. This slogan is an enforcer of Bengali subnationalism in India. If one mistakenly equates the Bengali identity of Bangladesh to the original notion of Bengali identity prevalent in West Bengal, as perhaps was done by Annoda Shankar Rai, then it could give rise to separatism in West Bengal from the Indian Republic. A strong constituency of Bengali-speaking Muslims are present in West Bengal, for whom Bengali identity being equivalent to Bengali-speaking Muslim may not at all be unacceptable, irrespective of one's allegiance to India. It must be clear that such separatism will not help any person from West Bengal with the original notion of the Bengali identity. Contrary to their expectations, joining Bangladesh to have a pure linguistic identity shall not let Bengalis have their own language, as understood in West Bengal. And worse, it would also rob them of their religious freedom and other facets of Bengali culture. In reality, Bangladesh's quote unquote Bengali identity serves as an ominous bait for Bengali non Muslims in West Bengal. Secondly, while it is not wrong to have own language and modify the language based on own cultural aspirations, Bangladesh cannot simultaneously escape the responsibility of crimes committed towards minorities before partition, the Great Calcutta Killing and Noakhali genocide, and after partition, through much violence committed during the 1950s and 60s. Abul Mansur Ahmad, a powerful politician who worked with both Muslim League during the pre-partition era and Awami League after partition, cogently argued for the validity of the formation of Bangladesh under the same Lahore resolution that gave birth to Pakistan. The applicability of Lahore resolution for Bangladesh binds them with the responsibility with the Islamist violences intrinsically linked to the Pakistan project that began from the Lahore Declaration. The Bangladesh establishment must answer the question of honoring the butcher of Bengal, Suravardi, and lack of apology extended for crimes of those era. It is no different in the case of Pakistan too. Nevertheless, Pakistan does not enjoy any high prestige in the eyes of the world, with regularly being featured as a terrorism exporting country, for example, in the United States state sponsors of terrorism designation list as a terrorist safe haven, whereas Bangladesh, as we have noted, is celebrated by the United Nations as a shining example of pluralism, tolerance, and dialogue. This double standard must end in the interest of fairness, justice, and good sense for mankind to follow. Let us go back to the discussion whether Bangladesh represents nationalism for Bengali-speaking Muslims only. A non-imperialist nationalism considers itself one of the many and therefore has no beef with the existence of others. On the other hand, an imperialism presented in the form of nationalism considers itself the ultimate destiny for the others and presents an idea or plan to eliminate their existence over time. As an example of the former kind, we could talk about the nationalism of Poland, who wanted a land for the Polish people and considered any other nationalism, such as German nationalism, equally acceptable. On the other hand, the Nazis considered themselves superior to others because of their social theory and wanted to annex land of other nations on the pretext of justice. They have referred to their imperialistic desire for land as Lebensraum, living space for the Germans. We argue that the Bengali identity of Bangladesh is not an example of any nationalism at all, but an imperialism, pure and simple, to assert its control on the eastern part of contemporary India. This is not any conspiracy theory. Maulana Bhasani, one of the much celebrated ideologues of Awami League popular in Bangladesh and West Bengal, stated this plan loud and clear even in January 1972 itself. Quote, Assam is mine, West Bengal is mine, Tripura too is mine. Until these regions are liberated back from India, neither the liberation of Bangladesh nor its map is complete. End quote. This notion of Bhasani is naked imperialism, understandably coming out of a version of Islamism that this idea should reign supreme over all Bengali-speaking people, irrespective of the actual reality. For example, Assam and Tripura never constituted any part of Bengal. Moreover, after the partition of Bengal, with East Bengal being given to Pakistan, the Muslim homeland, a Bengali Muslim nationalism, should make no claim in remaining parts of India. Bhasani could make a claim only if the nationalism of Bangladesh considers their Bengali identity as the ultimate destiny for other Bengali speakers. But Bhasani wasn't a lone voice, just a loud one. Since Bangladesh is surrounded by and economically extremely dependent upon India, realpolitik prevents Bangladeshi leaders of prominence from staking a claim for any part of India. For an analogy, even Hitler agreed to accept the dominance of Britain in 1935 in the Anglo-German Naval Agreement, AGNA, in the interest of realpolitik. What Bhasani echoed was similar to Hitler's expansionist ambitions. Quite understandably, his followers are creating a Lebensraum for the Bangladeshis in Assam. Retired Indian Police Service officer Hiranyakumar Bhattacharya has shed light on how this process undermines India's democracy. He explains how illegal immigration is orchestrated, including packing voter rolls with undocumented immigrants who prioritize protecting their own status. Through strategic voting, they consolidate their influence, pushing demographic shifts that ultimately reshape the cultural fabric of Assam. The Islamist organizations like Jamaatul Mujahideen are on the prowl to set up their network against the Indian state in favor of Sharia in different places of West Bengal, Assam, and Tripura. An imperialist mindset demands non-acknowledgement of the empirical reality in favor of an imagined reality, like socialism doing good things. That imagined reality in the case of Bangladesh is occupying the territory of Shamsuddin Ilyas Shah, the Turk who founded the Sultanate of Bengal, consisting of not just Bangladesh but many parts of eastern India. He is increasingly being celebrated as a founder of the Bengali nation. The loss of this Bengali nation to the British is observed through the Polashi Day, on which Sirajuddaulah, the last powerful Muslim Nawab of Bengal, was defeated, and the political power of Bengal virtually got transferred to the British. Did the chief advisor of Bangladesh, the effective head of government in 2024, Muhammad Yunus, indirectly threaten India with Bangladesh's ability to be a potential troublemaker there, possibly alluding to Bhasani's dream for a greater Bangladesh? We have effectively demonstrated that the reality of the language movement is quite different, with bigotry, intolerance, and lack of dialogue dominating in the narrative of Bengali nationalism of Bangladesh. The pretense of linguistic nationalism is not out of love for indigenous culture and decolonization, but in the interest of disguising a fledgling Islam in the face of adverse geopolitical reality. Caveat to our story. We never claim the absence of a constituency for pluralism in Bangladesh, but that constituency is too small and ever shrinking in the politics adopted by Bangladesh. This small echelon of secular intellectuals who stand for pluralism and a secular Bengali identity are feeling marginalized and sensing danger not only to their ideology but also to their physical self considerably. Whereas we have the greatest respect for them as human beings, we could not cloud the reality out of our respect for them. Their vision of Bangladesh is not even the peripheral one in the politics adopted by the society of Bangladesh. To draw a comparison, we may refer to the influential communist intellectual echelons at prestigious American universities like Harvard University or University of California at Berkeley that were present even before the Second World War and continued for a long time. Nobody describes America a communist country until the fall of the communist bloc in the 1990s, because the dominant national narrative was anti-communist. Similarly, an echelon exists in Bangladesh also who really cherish to construct a secular Bengali identity. While we sincerely respect them for their humanism, however, the members of this small tribe are not having much of an influence in the national narrative of Bangladesh. Great example. That if what's happening in the universities or in the minds of the intellectuals was really how the entire nation must be described, then America is a communist country, because the students in the campuses, they seem to like communism a lot. We present a few examples of how this echelon does not have any share of power. Taslima Nasrin is an award-winning author. She's an atheist, feminist, and liberal, the face of a secular Bengali identity. She presented the story of persecution of a secular Bengali Hindu family in Bangladesh in her novel Lajja, Shame, which infuriated the Islamists who forced her to leave Bangladesh in 1994. This was a defeat of the secular Bengali identity in the face of Islamism, not necessarily related to a Muslim identity. Understandably, the government in power at the time of her exile was a non-Awami League government that is, in popular perception, less interested in keeping the secular Bengali identity. However, Awami League did rule Bangladesh after this incident for 2 decades after her exile, with 15 years at a stretch since 2009, and still Taslima could not come back to Bangladesh for even a moment. Secondly, a group of secular activists started the Shabbak protests on 5th February 2013 against a lenient punishment towards the convicted war criminal Abdul Qadir Mullah, who cooperated with the Pakistani establishment during 1971 to hunt down the liberation activists. The Shabbak protests soon became quite popular, drawing huge crowds and making news in the international media. Apart from demanding capital punishment for Qadir Mullah, the protesters also demanded ban of Jamaat-e-Islami from politics and the boycott of Jamaat institutions, all of which were catered to from an Awami League government. However, this does not at all indicate any victory for the protesters in the long run to perhaps correct the national narrative of Bangladesh. In the middle of the protests, the Islamists, allegedly Jamaat activists, started killing atheist bloggers like Ahmed Rajiv Haider and continued with many bloggers dead, even more being wounded and eventually exiled, and many more potential ones being silenced. While the influence of Jamaat remained significant, the Awami League was forced to lean on Hifazat-e-Islam to counter Jamaat, keeping Islamism relevant in Bangladesh politics. Post Hasina's exit from power in August 2024, Jamaat-e-Islami has increased its footprint in the new government of Muhammad Yunus, as vindicated by the reversal of the existing ban on Jamaat-e-Islami, which was there since 2008, and the imposition of a ban on the Student Union of Awami League. Thirdly, the secular activists could not even secure the academic institutions, as the education system of Bangladesh is much compromised now, as we shall observe in different chapters like 9, 12, and 13. The fact that the secular educated echelon could not even offer any fight in their own turf says enough about their clout in society, or the lack thereof. The purpose of this book is to unearth the dominant narrative of Bangladesh. While we acknowledge the idea of multiple narratives in a society, we cannot disproportionately emphasize a particular narrative by being intellectually lazy or looking for a convenient position rather than seeking reality. Do what's meaningful, not what's expedient. With that spirit, Kausik Gangopadhyay goes forward with this book. Plan for the book. We describe the untold story of Bangladesh in 4 sections. Section 1 describes the Muslim politics in Bengal before partition and subsequently in East Pakistan from 1920s to 1952 on the issue of language. I think a great reference, if you want to read another book on this very topic, is India Bharat Pakistan. Brilliant book on this topic. I know a lot about this era because I read India Bharat Pakistan, and of course Venkat Dhulipala's book as well, but that's not so much focused on Bengal. But India Bharat Pakistan is very, very, very much focused on Bengal and Bangladesh. Chapter 2 establishes that the usual narrative of the 21st day of February is severely flawed. The language movement was not started by the University of Dhaka students, but by Dhirendranath Datta, ex-member of the Congress, and other Hindus who moved his bold proposal to make Bengali the language of Pakistan. The Bengali-speaking Muslim politicians opposed him initially, but the university students appreciated this move, understanding its value to their career and livelihood. While the police firing killed people on the fateful day of 21st February 1952, only one among the celebrated martyrs was a university student, and others unfortunately became a target of police firing amidst chaos ruling the street. Section 2 is about the propaganda of language being a fundamental issue of East Pakistan politics, which it isn't. This section chronicles the events during 1952 through 1971. Let me have a sip of tea. No, Abhay. Even that's going to be as counterproductive, because if elite institutions validate Garuda Prakashan, then it means it's kind of validating all the random right-wingers who write at Garuda Prakashan. And that takes away from the eliteness, the elite quality of that institution. So they won't be able to do that, or they shouldn't do that. I don't think they can. Chapters 3 and 4 dissect the origins and evolution of Awami League and its main ideologues, Mujibur Rahman, Maulana Bhasani, and Shahid Surawardi. Chapter 5 is a discussion on the dropping of the Muslim word from the Awami League. Chapter 6 also highlights that language was never an issue in the East Pakistan politics after Bengali was granted the same status as that of Urdu in 1956. The Pakistani Army's mission in East Pakistan of 1971 was against Hindus and the Hindu-driven narrative of separatism without anything against language. Chapter 7 discusses the Bengali Hindu genocide of Pakistan and its erasure from the history of Bangladesh. Section 3 narrates the events after the creation of Bangladesh in 1972. Mujib started the journey of Bangladesh with a mask of secularity, but all his actions implied the Muslim character of the new state. Eventually, Islamism surfaced through covert and overt means. Chapter 8 is about the story of Bangladesh from covert Muslimhood to overtly Islamic nation. Chapter 9 discusses the continued economic immiseration of the Hindus in the nascent nation with no lesser vigor. There were major events where Hindus were persecuted, including the destruction of many temples, burning and looting of Hindu properties, the abuse of Hindu women, and the killing of Hindus. However, smaller events of violence may have had an even bigger impact in forcing Hindus to leave, leading to a sharp decrease in the Hindu population proportion since 1971. Education has erased the role of India in 1971, and with the popular narrative equating Hindus to India, The country's Hindu past is almost forgotten. Chapter 10 is about the brutal persecution of the Buddhists and tribal people by the Bangladeshi government. Section 4 discusses the issue of Bengali identity and its appropriation by Bangladeshi narrative. Chapter 11 discusses the issue of ethnic identity with religion, language, and geographic region of dwelling as its principal determinants. The problem with the identity of Bengali-speaking Muslims originated from a differential perception about own identity among the elite Muslims compared to the common Muslims. Chapter 12 elaborates on the various tropes of historiography that the Bangladeshi Muslims have to resort to salvage their Bengali identity. Chapter 13 is about the Bengali language. Culturally, the language has become increasingly Islamized, with memories of the old Bengali culture almost gone. Yeah, it's full of Gosol, Khala, Pupa. In addition, the national narrative of Bangladesh presents the new Bengali identity as a token of Muslimhood, effectively excluding the Hindu Bengali speaking population. Chapter 14 ventures into this imperialistic project. For the readers interested about having an academic framework based analysis, we have presented one in Appendix Chapter A1 to identify nationalism vis-a-vis imperialism, given by Yoram Hazoni's work called The Virtue of Nationalism, and Kausik Gangopadhyay's book, The Majoritarian Myth, which does a great job, I think. We have demonstrated in Chapter A2 why the founding notions of Bangladesh fit neither a secular Bengali identity nor any nationalism but an imperialism, more precisely, Islamism for the Bengali-speaking population. Our conclusion is quite a different one from the romanticism of 21st February that a generation of Bengalis grew up with. The proven falsity of the left liberal perception about Bangladesh has serious geopolitical implications in the Indian subcontinent. We have discussed the need to safeguard the Bengali identity from misappropriation. That's why this book is a must-read for understanding Bangladesh and anticipating the region's future. This is such great scholarly work, guys. What beautiful, great work. This is where the introduction ends. Section 1 begins. It's called Busting the Myth Around the Language Movement. I will go through just the first chapter. Who really started the language movement? This is a teaser, okay? Go ahead, buy the book, order the book on Amazon right now if you haven't already. Who really started the language movement? The Muslim politics on language in Bengal. When Lord Curzon announced the partition of Bengal in 1905, the Muslim leadership of Bengal, which was running low after the loss of Nawabdom, fixed their attention to consolidating their political power. The Muslim League was established in Dhaka in 1906. Although Curzon's plan of partitioning of Bengal failed, nevertheless, their mission continued unabated to demand a greater share of the state power by means of their numerical majority. The leadership comprising of Hussain Shahid Surawardi, later infamous as the Butcher of Bengal, Maulana Maniruzzaman Islamabadi, the founder of Jamiat Ulema-e-Hind Bangla, Muhammad Akram Khan, who was active in the re-establishment of Khilafat movement, and other prominent Muslims reached a compromise with Deshbandhu Chittoranjan Das, known as the Bengal Pact of 1923. This pact enabled the leadership towards increasing their representation in politics and government jobs, as well as claiming various religious demands. Some of the terms, if we did not have government jobs in the first place, imagine what fun it would be. Of course, now, Ramvilas Paswan's son wants privatization to also do reservation. Some of the terms of this Bengal Pact were: A. Representation in the Legislative Assembly of Bengal based on population proportion. B. A staggering 80% of reservation for Muslims in government jobs until 55% of the posts are held by Muslims. Prohibition of musical processions in front of mosques. No interference with the slaughter of cows for religious reasons. In essence, the Muslim leadership of Bengal had two aspirations from the beginning. One, the spread of Muslim dominance in the political and economic spheres of Bengal. Two, the establishment of Islamist Arabic culture, also known as Islamicate culture, as coined by Marshall Hodgson, historian. Islamist Arabic culture in the collective life of Bengal while undermining the region's indigenous Hindu culture. The second part is clear from the demand for prohibition of local music, which is not an act of plurality, but taking over the local culture by the tenets of political Islam. Chittaranjan Das's demise within 2 years of this pact did not let it come into reality in Bengal. However, in another 2 decades, their aspirations were fulfilled with the partition of Bengal and the concurrent establishment of East Pakistan. The problem, however, rose elsewhere. Even before the creation of Pakistan, the proponents of Pakistan could not reach any understanding regarding the state language of their proposed new nation. The new central leadership of the Muslim League and the like-minded intellectuals from Delhi and Aligarh continued to argue for Urdu. Sir Ziauddin Ahmad, the then Vice-Chancellor of Aligarh University, proposed making Urdu the state language of Pakistan at an Urdu conference held in Hyderabad on 18th May 1947. This proposal triggered anxious reactions from the proponents of Pakistan from Bengal. Their fear was about losing their dominance in the education sector and workplace in the soon-to-be carved-out East Bengal. On July 29, 1947, Dr. Muhammad Shahidullah, an academic and a cultural icon of Bengali-speaking Muslims, wrote an article entitled Pakistaner Rashtrabhasha Samasya. Okay, Pakistan ka Rashtrabhasha lekar samasya. The problem of the state language of Pakistan, in the then widely circulated daily Azad, to advocate against making Urdu the state language of Pakistan. This opposition did not prevent the anointment of Urdu as the state language of Pakistan, along with continuation of English as another official language since the creation of this nation on 14th August 1947. A few months later, on 31st December 1947, Dr. Shahidullah penned down another article entitled The Language Problem for Education in East Pakistan in the newspaper Takbir. In that article, he advocated for Arabic as the state language instead of Urdu, along with Bengali. He wrote, quote, "The importance of religious language is second only to mother tongue, at least from a Muslim perspective. For this reason, I wholeheartedly demand Arabic like Bengali. The birth of Pakistan as a nation would reach its culmination on that day when Arabic is made the state language of all Pakistan. However, at present, there are considerable obstacles to adopting Arabic as the only state language for Pakistan rather than having it as one of the many languages." Language mein pluralism. Around a fortnight after the birth of Pakistan, an Islamic cultural institution named Tamadun Majlis was established under the leadership of Professor Abul Kashem of the Department of Physics under the University of Dhaka. The institute began its journey on 1st September 1947 with the publishing of a Bengali booklet entitled The State Language of Pakistan, Bengali or Urdu. This booklet had 3 articles in it written by Abul Mansur Ahmad, the editor of the Ittihad, a daily magazine or newspaper published from Kolkata, Professor Qazi Motahar Hussain of Dhaka University, and Abul Kashem himself. The lead article of the booklet was by Professor Abul Kashem, expressing the demand to declare Bengali as the main language for official purposes and medium of education in East Pakistan. We have demonstrated in chapter 13 that the construction of a separate identity among the Muslim population of Bengal happened through developing aversion to the Bengali language, arguably seen as an identity of the Bengali Hindus. Now, Qazi Motahar Hussain endeavored to negate this narrative among the Muslim population of Bengal. Not only did he claim in his article that the Bengali language has been developed through the generous patronage of the Muslim rulers, but he also suggested that Bengali could be considered as an appropriate language for Muslims. We quote here from his article called The State Language and the Language Problem of East Pakistan. Quote, "During the Mughal period, especially the nobles of the Arakan dynasty lavishly patronized the growth of Bengali language. Muslim court poets such as the likes of Daulat Qazi and Syed Alaul claimed immortal fame through composing poetry in Bengali. Until now, Muslims have remained inactive to make the Bengali language compatible with Islamic values. Hence, they translated Allah as Niranjan when they were doing the Dobhashi thing. The Muslim approach to the issue at hand has been restricted to censuring the Hindus for having filled the Bengali language with elements of Hindu culture. This approach, however, has no place in East Pakistan. Here, the Muslim writers have the main responsibility of inculcating the Islamic heritage in the masses. Today, the time has come for Muslim intellectuals to introduce our countrymen to Islamic civilization and culture by creating good Bengali literature instead of their existing shabby version." See, the right-wingers of those days in Bangladesh were talking about the same things we are talking about today. Shabby version mat banao, badhiya literature likho, magar Bengali mein likho. This subject would not only enrich the mother tongue sufficiently, but also make Islamic ideology the heart and soul of the masses, removing their sense of poverty, and inferiority. End quote. Dr. Shahidullah, too, in his aforementioned article, The Problem of the State Language of Pakistan, denied the contribution of Hindus to Bengali language. Quote, the old Bengali language existed in India even before the Muslim era, for which Bengal is indebted to the Buddhist society. Likewise, during the Pathan rule, medieval Bengali literature took shape and flourished with the patronage from Muslim aristocrats and rulers. Even during the British period, the contribution of Muslims to Bengali literature is not insignificant, rather has grown over time. End quote. We shall observe the merits of Dr. Shahidullah's claim in chapter 12. Meanwhile, a key person in the language politics of Muslim League of Bengal was Abul Mansur Ahmad. He was a journalist who became close to the Muslim League after the 1937 elections and associated himself with the Pakistan movement from 1940 onwards. In the same year, when Tafazzal Hussain Manik Mia of Muslim League, who was quite close to Hussain Shahid Surawardi, the principal architect of the Great Calcutta killings of 1946, started the daily Ittihad in order to form public opinion in favor of the formation of Pakistan. Abul Mansur Ahmad became the first editor of this daily. Mansur Ahmad, one of the proponents of an Islamized Bengali language, expressed doubt about the economic future of Muslims of East Pakistan in his article called Bengali Shall Be Our State Language of the aforementioned booklet. In this booklet, he argued that if Urdu had been designated as the sole state language of Pakistan, the educated Bengali-speaking Muslims of East Pakistan would be considered uneducated. Quote, if Urdu becomes the state language, the educated class in East Pakistan will be deemed illiterate and unfit for government jobs overnight. By replacing Persian with English as the state language in the mid-19th century, British imperialism overnight made the Muslim educated class uneducated and unfit for government jobs. And that's going to happen again. That was their concern. End quote. Quite remarkably, quote, further more of his quotes. Quite remarkably was added by Kausik Gangopadhyay himself as an adjective. Now he goes on. The quote goes on from this guy. It was not possible to sell many copies of this booklet. The target audience of this booklet was against making Bengali the state language. Not only the educated public in general. Okay, the target audience of this booklet was against making Bengali the state language. Not only the educated public in general, but also the majority of students at the University of Dhaka hardly summoned any enthusiasm on the question of state language. It was difficult to organize even small informal meetings in the university hostels like Muslim Hall, Fazlul Haq Hall, etc. Lol. We note that the name of the cultural institution was Tamadun Majlis, an Arabic language inspired name which has never been used before in Bengali. Until CPIM had their own women's wing called Mohila Majlis. No, that's Mohila Shomiti. Yeah, Mohila Majlis used to be a radio show. This does not speak highly about Professor Kashem's love for Bengali. But he was no exception. The Paigam, again a Persian word not used in Bengali but in Urdu, was the first daily newspaper published in East Pakistan after the partition of India with Faiz Ahmed Chaudhuri as editor. In 1947, another prominent newspaper published from Dhaka was Zindagi, another non-Bengali and Urdu word. Maulana Akram Khan published the daily Azad in 1948. Ittifaq, Insan and Insaf were daily and weekly newspapers offering support to the movement demanding Bengali as state language, none of which had Bengali names to begin with. Lol. Unsurprisingly, the editors of Ittifaq, Insan and Insaf were members of Rashtrabhasha Karma Porishad, executive body for state language, formed in October 1948 at the initiative of Abul Kashem. Two more newspapers were Ittihad, described before, and Now Belal from the leftist camp. We have already noted that the two dailies, Azad and Takbir, published Dr. Shahidullah's two articles. These newspapers and periodicals, all named in Arabic, Persian or Urdu, ran editorials that evoked deep compassion and love for the Bengali language. It is definitely telling about their love for Bengali when we note that none of the above-mentioned dailies and periodicals was named after any Bengali word, lol. Arguably, it was not their love for Bengali, but their insecurity that if the state language had become Urdu, the Bengali-speaking Muslims would lag behind the Muslims of West Pakistan in employment, in government jobs. They're taking our jabs. Both are concerned The Bengali speaking Muslims would lag behind the Muslims of West Pakistan in employment was the genesis of the so called language movement. At that time, the state language was not even an issue for the blue collar workers and agrarian sections of society. During the 60s, post 21st February 1952, the discussion of Urdu movies in movie periodicals of East Pakistan drops enough hints about the popularity of the Urdu language to the educated Muslims of East Pakistan. Now, a subchapter on Dhirendranath Datta, the Braveheart. Among the so-called pioneers of the language movement, if anyone really cared for Bengali language and culture, it was neither Shohidullah nor Abul Kashem, but Dhirendranath Datta. On 25th February 1948, he raised the demand for making Bengali the state language in the Constituent Assembly of Pakistan with the following words, quote, out of 6 crores and 90 lakhs, 69, that is 69 millions of people inhabiting this state, 4 crores and 40 lakhs, that is 44 millions of people speak Bengali language. So, sir, what should be the state language of the state? The state language of the state should be the language which is used by the majority of the people of the state. And for that, sir, I consider that Bengali language is a lingua franca of our state. End quote. This dauntless Bengali hero was a lawyer, social activist, and prominent politician. He was born on 2nd November 1886 at the Ramrail village of Brahmanbaria, East Bengal, in 1906. He passed the FA examination, the then name for high school leaving examination, with honors from Comilla College, and continued his studies at the Ripon College, Calcutta. Subsequently, he earned a Bachelor of Arts in 1908 and a Bachelor of Law in 1910. He entered politics through joining the movement against the partition of Bengal and got involved with Congress activities during his student days as early as in 1905. He formed an organization called Mukti Sangho in Comilla in 1921. He was also associated with the establishment of Abhay Ashram in Comilla in 1923. Abhay Ashram. On 2nd July 1930, the British government arrested him for civil disobedience. After being released from prison in November 1931, he returned to the legal profession and was elected as a member of the Bengal Legislative Assembly as a Congress candidate. On 9th January 1932, he was imprisoned again following an arrest warrant issued against the revolutionaries and was subsequently released after a year in February 1933. In 1936, he was elected as a member of the then Tripura District Board. In 1937, he was elected a member of the Bengal Legislative Assembly. As an elected member, he made important contributions to the Bengal Tenancy Amendment Act of 1938, the Bengal Agricultural Debtors Act of 1936, and the Bengal Moneylenders Act 1940. He won again in the 1946 election. After the partition of India in 1947, he decided to stay in East Pakistan, perhaps to oversee the welfare of the persecuted Bengali Hindus there. The glorious second chapter of his political career began immediately. He was elected as a member of the Pakistan Constituent Assembly from East Pakistan in December of that year, and a few months later, in February 1948, he attended the first session of the Pakistan Constituent Assembly in Karachi, where he presented his historic resolution presented above, which we just discussed. 2 amendment motions were moved on his proposal, along with a heated debate in the Constituent Assembly. That the ominous seed of the partition of Pakistan is hidden in his proposal was observed by the then Prime Minister of Pakistan, Liaquat Ali Khan. While opposing the proposal, Khan mocked the idea and the integrity of Datta's by saying, quote, Pakistan is a Muslim state and it must have as its lingua franca the language of the Muslim nation, Urdu. I find now that the object is not such an innocent one as I thought it was. The object of this amendment is to create a rift between the people of Pakistan. The object of this amendment is to take away from the Muslims that unifying force that brings them together. So Liaquat Ali Khan gets pissed off with Dhirendranath Datta. End quote. It is noteworthy that not only the Prime Minister of Pakistan but also Khwaja Nazimuddin, the Provincial Prime Minister of East Bengal, and all Bengali-speaking Muslim League members opposed his proposal. Dhirendranath was supported by Sri Chandra Chattopadhyay, the leader of the opposition in the Pakistani parliament. Sri Chandra was a veteran advocate of the Calcutta High Court and respected for his resolute nature. He was active till 1955-56, octogenarian by then in politics, and died in 1967. Bhupendra Kumar Datta, a revolutionary of the Jugantar group, was another parliamentarian who supported Dhirendranath. He was immobilized in 1958 during the martial rule of Pakistan Datta left for India in 1962 after 4 years of efforts to fight for the Hindus rather in vain. Prem Hori Burma, leader of the scheduled castes and tribes, was another parliamentarian supporter for Dhirendranath's proposal. Professor Rajkumar Chakraborty was an articulate member of this Bengali Hindu leadership. Dhirendranath Datta's proposal in the Constituent Assembly, however, created great excitement in East Pakistan. His granddaughter Oroma Datta recreates the public reaction as told to her by Dhirendranath. Quote, I returned from Karachi after the first session of the Constituent Assembly. There was no security at the underdeveloped Tejgaon airport. I got off the plane and saw about 40 to 50 young men standing in one place, each of them wearing a wrapper. I imagined that they had come to protest because of my speech in favor of Bengali as a state language in the Constituent Assembly. I feared that they might even have sharp weapons under their wrappers. Hesitantly, I still moved forward. When I got within their reach, suddenly everyone took out lots of flowers from under the wrappers and showered them on me. All of them were students of Dhaka University. End quote. The Pakistan leadership never forgave Dhirendranath Datta, the infidel, who contributed massively to the language movement. They hated him and remembered his speech for more than 2 decades. The moment of revenge came in 1971 when Pakistani President Yahya Khan launched Operation Searchlight to quell the separatist movement in East Pakistan. On the night of 29th March 1971, the Pakistani army abducted Datta and his younger son Dilip Datta from their home to take them to Moinamoti cantonment. Thereafter, they subjected the octogenarian Dhirendranath to limitless, inhuman torture, breaking of limbs, gouging out eyes, etc. He was finally killed on April 14, but the corpse was never returned to the family or to anyone else. So 29th March से April 14 तक torture चला उनके ऊपर. And commies and Bengali Brahmin Boito Kaistos of Kolkata today, who are commies, will tell you that one must never learn history from movies like Chava, you see. Learn history from history books where they teach you socialism. Don't learn history from movies, guys. Even if they have happened countless times. However, Datta got almost no recognition for such extreme self-sacrifice. In a cruel irony, after independence in 1971, the local Bengali-speaking Muslims seized a part of Dhirendranath's immovable property by dint of the Enemy Property Act, to be discussed in chapter 9. Worse still, he has remained neglected in the history of Bangladesh's freedom struggle and language movement. Today, Salam Barkat Rafiq Jabbar of 21st February fame are well known and considered martyrs. But how many even know about Dhirendranath? His name is missing from Dhaka, the capital city of Bangladesh, with no prominent road or public place being named after him. Even in Comilla town, only the road in front of his house is named Dhirendranath Datta Road. The city admittedly also has a stadium named after him, Shohid Dhirendranath Stadium, but more popularly known as Comilla Stadium. And that is all in the entire Bangladesh. In entire Bangladesh. Shohid Dhirendranath Stadium, Shahid kiske haath hua? His granddaughter Oroma has expressed her regret. Oroma. Smell. Perfume. Who names their daughter Oroma? What was he thinking, Dhirendranath Datta? Pirit? So, Oroma Datta says, quote, the dream of my grandfather Shohid Dhirendranath Datta was to establish Bengali in all aspects of state, education, society and life. This dream has become a settled fact today. But where is the recognition for that person who dreamt it? Every year when the Martyrs' Day comes, enlightened discussions by intellectuals happen, then the day goes by. But no, I do not remember the name of martyr Dhirendranath Datta being referred to with dignity. The deep pain and anguish I feel at the conscious neglect of my grandfather is a part of my memory, because I see the reflection of his proposal everywhere, but he is left unmentioned. I have only one thing to ask. Why? End quote. This regret goes in vain. We shall see that this erasure of Datta from history is part of establishing the idea of an Islamic Bangladesh, where the Islamist establishment has been tactfully trying to exclude Hindus from the quote-unquote Bengali identity. It is only normal that Dhirendranath Datta is relegated to a footnote in the history of language movement and freedom struggle of Bangladesh. This is where the first chapter ends. Next chapter is called February 21, 1952, the narrative versus the reality. Narrative versus reality. Nice. I think you now have enough reasons for buying this book. And just as a matter of fun, just because it's a book talking about Bangla pride, etc., I will put a Feluda page mark on this, which I bought from the bookstall of Bangla Pakko during this year's Kolkata Book Fair. Lol. Nice. We did a lot of the book discussing. We completed a lot of it. Rest of the book will be discussed over a matter of entire year from the membership live streams. Coming back soon today, by the way, guys, to discuss another book. Yeah, I will come live once again in about an hour or so. Thank you for joining, guys. Make sure you buy this book as soon as possible. The Joy Bangla Deception. I will put my affiliate links in the description box as well. Thanks, guys. See you soon.
যদি সবাই ফিরে যায় ওরে ওরে ও ভাগা সবাই ফিরে যায় যদি গহন পথে যাওয়ার কালে কেউ ফিরে না যায় তবে পথের কাটা তুই রক্ত মাখা চরণ তলে একলা দলরে তুই রক্ত মাখা চরণ তলে একলা দলরে যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না তবে একলা চলো রে যদি আলো না ধরে ওরে ওরে ও ভাগা আলো না ধরে যদি ঝড় বাদলে আধার রাতে দুয়ার দেয় ঘরে তবে বজ্রানলে আপন বুকের পাঁজর জ্বালিয়ে নিয়ে একলা চলো রে আপন বুকের পাঁজর জ্বালিয়ে নিয়ে একলা চলো রে যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে একলা চলো একলা চলো একলা চলো একলা চলো